The phone call lasted exactly 7 minutes and 32 seconds. Simone Carter knew this because she had been staring at the timer on her phone screen, watching the numbers tick by while she pressed the device against her ear, listening to dead air. She had hung up deliberately, after carefully crafting what she thought was a convincing performance of devastation and shock. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Peterson," she had said into the phone, her voice carefully modulated to sound broken and defeated. "I understand. Yes, I'll clean out my office tomorrow. Thank you for the opportunity." The call had been fake. Completely fabricated. Mr. Peterson, her actual boss at Sterling Marketing Group, was probably sitting in his office 3 floors above her, completely unaware that his star employee had just used him as a prop in an elaborate test of her husband's character. Simone sat in her car in the parking lot of the office building where she had worked for the past 8 years, climbing from junior account manager to senior marketing executive. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the phone down on her lap. The trembling wasn't from nerves about lying to her husband. It was from the deep, gnawing certainty that she was about to confirm her worst suspicions. For 3 months something had been wrong. Alexander had been different. Distant. Their conversations had become surface-level exchanges about weather and weekend plans. He stayed late at work more often, claiming project deadlines that never seemed to end. He had stopped asking about her day, stopped celebrating her wins at work, stopped touching her the way he used to. But it was the money that had really caught her attention. Alexander had always been careful with finances, but lately he had been asking pointed questions about their accounts. How much was in their joint savings? What was her retirement fund worth? Did she have any investments he didn't know about? When she asked why he was suddenly so interested in their financial picture, he would shrug and say something about planning for the future. The future. The word had started to sound ominous coming from his mouth. Simone had built a successful career through careful observation and strategic thinking. She could read people, understand their motivations, predict their actions. These skills had made her one of the most sought-after marketing executives in the city. They had also made her increasingly suspicious of her husband's behavior, so she had decided to test him. If Alexander truly loved her, if their marriage was solid, then her losing her job would be devastating news that they would face together. He would comfort her, reassure her, start making plans for how they would manage financially until she found something new. He would be her partner in crisis. But if her suspicions were correct, if Alexander was planning something that required her to be financially dependent on him, then her job loss might be exactly what he was hoping for. The drive home took 25 minutes through rush hour traffic. Simone used the time to prepare herself emotionally for what was coming. She practiced looking defeated, shoulders slumped, eyes downcast. She rehearsed the words she would use to tell Alexander about her supposed firing. She even managed to work up a few tears by thinking about how much she actually loved her job and how devastated she would be if she really lost it. Their house sat on a quiet street in Riverside Heights, a neighborhood they had chosen together 5 years ago when Alexander's accounting firm had promoted him to senior partner. The house was beautiful, with a wraparound porch and mature oak trees in the front yard. Simone had fallen in love with it immediately, imagining the life they would build there together. Now, as she pulled into the driveway, the house looked different to her. Less like a home and more like a stage where she was about to perform the most important role of her life. Alexander's car was already in the garage. He was home early, which was unusual lately. Simone took a deep breath and got out of her car, making sure to move slowly, as if she was carrying an invisible weight on her shoulders. She opened the front door and called out, "Alexander? I'm home." "In the kitchen," he called back, his voice neutral. Simone walked through the living room, noting the way the late afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. Everything looked normal, peaceful even. But she could feel the tension in her chest, the anticipation of what was about to happen. Alexander was standing at the kitchen island, sorting through mail. He was still wearing his work clothes, a navy suit that made him look professional and successful. At 35, he was still handsome in the conventional way that had first attracted her to him 10 years ago. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that was just starting to show silver at the temples. He looked up when she entered and she saw something flicker across his face. Was it concern? Curiosity? She couldn't tell. "You're home early," she said, setting her purse down on the counter. "Finished up a client meeting sooner than expected," he replied, then looked at her more carefully. "You look upset. Everything okay?" This was it. The moment of truth. Simone took a shaky breath and let her shoulders sag even more. "I got fired today," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The silence that followed lasted exactly 4 seconds. Simone counted them, watching Alexander's face carefully for his reaction. What she saw made her blood run cold. Relief. Clear, unmistakable relief flickered across his features before he quickly arranged his expression into something that might have passed for concern. "Oh, honey," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "What happened?" "Budget cuts," Simone said, sticking to the script she had prepared. "They eliminated my entire department. I have to clean out my office tomorrow." "I'm sorry," Alexander said, but he was already moving away from her, walking to the refrigerator to get a bottle of water. "That's tough." Tough. Her supposed job loss was tough. Not devastating. Not a crisis. Just tough. "I don't know what we're going to do," Simone continued, watching him carefully. "My salary was almost half our household income. We'll have to figure out how to pay the mortgage, the car payments, everything." Alexander opened his water bottle and took a long drink before responding. "Well, maybe this is a sign," he said finally. "A sign of what?" "Maybe it's time you took a break from working. We've been married for 7 years and you've been so focused on your career. Maybe this is an opportunity to slow down, focus on other things." "Other things?" Simone felt something cold settle in her stomach. "What other things?" "I don't know. Maybe we could start a family. Or you could take up some hobbies. You've always said you wanted to learn to paint." The conversation was surreal. Her husband was suggesting she become a housewife and take up painting while they faced financial ruin. Either he was completely delusional about their finances, or he knew something she didn't know. "Alexander, without my income we can't afford this house. We can't afford our lifestyle. I need to start looking for a new job immediately." "Don't worry about money," he said, and there was something in his voice that made her look at him sharply. "I've been doing well at the firm. We'll be fine." "You've been doing well? Since when?" "Since the Thompson merger went through last month. I got a significant bonus and they're promoting me to managing partner. I was going to surprise you with the news." Simone stared at her husband. In all the years she had known him, Alexander had never been able to keep a secret, especially good news. He would have told her about a promotion immediately, probably before he even left the office. The fact that he was only mentioning it now in response to her supposed job loss confirmed everything she had suspected. "That's wonderful news," she said carefully. "How much of a bonus?" "Enough that you don't need to worry about finding another job right away. You can take your time, figure out what you really want to do." What she really wanted to do was grab her husband by the shoulders and demand he tell her the truth. But instead, she nodded and tried to look grateful. "Maybe you're right," she said. "Maybe this is a blessing in disguise." "Exactly," Alexander said, and now his smile was genuine. "Everything happens for a reason." Simone excused herself to go upstairs and change clothes, but instead of going to their bedroom, she went to the guest room at the end of the hall. She closed the door and sat on the bed, trying to process what had just happened. Her husband had not comforted her. He had not expressed concern about their financial situation. He had not offered to help her look for a new job or suggested they tighten their budget temporarily. Instead, he had immediately suggested she stop working entirely, had claimed he could support them both, and had revealed a promotion and bonus that he had supposedly been keeping secret. Everything about his reaction confirmed her worst fears. Alexander wanted her to be financially dependent on him. He wanted her to lose her job, her independence, her ability to support herself. The question was why. As she sat in the guest room, Simone could hear Alexander moving around downstairs, and she realized she could hear him talking on the phone. His voice was too low for her to make out the words, but she could hear the tone. He sounded excited, almost celebratory. She crept to the top of the stairs and listened more carefully. Alexander was in his study and she could hear him more clearly now. "It worked perfectly," he was saying. "She bought the whole story about the promotion. She's not even going to look for another job." There was a pause while the person on the other end of the line responded. "I know, baby. It's all coming together exactly like we planned. By the time she figures out what's happening, it'll be too late." "Baby." Alexander had called someone baby. Someone who wasn't his wife. Simone gripped the banister so tightly her knuckles went white. She had known something was wrong, but hearing it confirmed was still like being punched in the stomach. "The lawyer said it'll take about 6 months to finalize everything," Alexander continued. "But once she's been out of work for a while, she'll be in a much weaker position. Especially if we can show she's been financially dependent on me. 6 months to finalize everything." Simone didn't need to hear more to understand what everything meant. Divorce. Alexander was planning to divorce her, but first he wanted to make sure she was in the weakest possible position financially. "I love you too, Rebecca," Alexander said, and Simone felt the last piece of her heart break into fragments. "This time next year we'll be together and everything will be ours." Rebecca. Simone knew that name. Rebecca Martinez worked at Alexander's firm as a paralegal. She was 28 years old, unmarried, and had been at the company for about a year. Simone had met her at the firm's Christmas party last year. She was beautiful, charming, and had spent most of the evening asking Simone questions about her work and her marriage. Now it all made sense. Rebecca had been gathering intelligence, learning about Simone's job, her income, her importance to their household's financial stability. She had been helping Alexander plan his exit strategy. As Simone stood at the top of the stairs, listening to her husband make plans to betray her with another woman, she felt something shift inside her. The hurt and shock were still there, but they were being joined by something else. Something colder and more focused. Anger. Pure, crystalline anger. Alexander and Rebecca thought they were so clever. They thought they had figured out the perfect way to destroy her life and steal everything she had worked for. They thought she was naive and trusting, that she would never suspect what they were planning. They were wrong. Simone Carter had not built a successful career by being naive. She had not climbed from junior account manager to senior executive by letting people take advantage of her. She had not survived in the competitive world of marketing by being weak or easily manipulated. If Alexander and Rebecca wanted to play games, she would show them what a real strategic mind could do. But first she needed to know everything. She needed to understand the full scope of their plan before she could begin to dismantle it. As she heard Alexander ending his phone call downstairs, Simone made her way quietly to their bedroom. She had work to do and she was going to start immediately. The test had worked perfectly. Now it was time to begin the real game. The next morning, Simone woke up before her alarm, her mind already sharp and focused despite having slept only 3 hours. She had spent most of the night lying in bed beside Alexander, listening to him breathe while her thoughts raced through everything she had learned and everything she needed to find out. Alexander was still asleep when she got up, showered, and dressed in her usual work clothes. Let him think she was going to clean out her office as planned. She needed him to believe the lie was still working. At 7:30 a.m. she was sitting in her real office at Sterling Marketing Group, door closed, coffee in hand, trying to focus on the most important project of her career, saving her own life from the man she had married. Her computer screen showed 17 different browser tabs open. Bank statements, credit reports, real estate records, court documents, social media profiles. She had been digging into Alexander's finances and Rebecca's background since 5 a.m., and what she was finding made her sick to her stomach. The promotion Alexander had mentioned was real. He had been promoted to managing partner last month, and he had received a bonus. A substantial one. But what he hadn't told her was that he had been moving money out of their joint accounts for months, transferring it to accounts that only he could access. She pulled up their joint checking account statement. In the past 4 months, Alexander had made 12 separate transfers, each for just under $5,000. The amounts were small enough that they wouldn't trigger any automatic alerts, but together they added up to nearly $60,000 that had been quietly removed from their shared finances. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what she found when she looked up Rebecca Martinez's background. Rebecca wasn't just a paralegal. She had been married twice before, both times to men significantly older and wealthier than herself. Her first husband, Michael Jonas, had been a doctor. They had divorced after 2 years, and according to the court records, Rebecca had walked away with half his assets and lifetime alimony. Her second husband, James Morrison, had been a real estate developer. Their divorce had been messy, involving accusations of financial fraud and manipulation. Rebecca had still come out ahead. Now she was targeting Alexander. And Alexander, blind to everything except his own selfish desires, was helping her plan the perfect crime. Simone's phone buzzed with a text message from her husband. "Hope cleaning out your office isn't too hard. Love you. Love you." The words made her want to throw her phone across the room. She replied, "It's difficult but I'll manage. Thank you for being so understanding." Understanding. As if supporting your wife through job loss was some kind of extraordinary act of kindness rather than basic human decency. Another text came through, "Don't worry about anything. I'll take care of you. Take care of you." The phrase that had once sounded romantic now sounded like a threat. At 10 a.m., Simone called her friend Patricia, who worked as a private investigator specializing in marital infidelity cases. "I need help," Simone said without preamble when Patricia answered the phone. "And I need it to be completely confidential." "What's going on?" Patricia's voice was immediately serious. They had been friends since college, and Patricia could read the tension in Simone's voice. Alexander is having an affair, and they're planning to divorce me after they've destroyed my financial independence. I need evidence, and I need to know exactly what they're planning. There was a pause. Are you sure about this? I'm sure. I have details, but I need professional help to get the full picture. Okay. Can you meet me for lunch? Somewhere Alexander won't see us. Yes. And Patricia? I need to move fast. I don't know how much time I have. I understand. We'll figure this out. After hanging up, Simone sat back in her chair and stared out the window at the city skyline. 6 months ago she had been happy. She had thought she was married to a man who loved her, who respected her, who saw her as an equal partner. She had been proud of the life they had built together. Now she realized that everything had been a lie. Alexander had never seen her as an equal partner. He had seen her as a resource to be exploited, a source of income to be controlled and eventually discarded when he found something better. The thought that hurt the most was wondering how long he had been planning this. Had he been thinking about leaving her when they bought the house? When they talked about starting a family? When he told her he loved her? Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Alexander. Hi, honey, she said, forcing her voice to sound normal. Hey, I was just thinking about you. How's the office clean-out going? It's hard, she said. I keep thinking about all the years I spent here, all the projects I worked on. It feels like I'm erasing my whole career. Well, maybe that's not such a bad thing, Alexander said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Maybe it's time to start fresh. Start fresh. As if throwing away 8 years of career building was refreshing rather than devastating. I suppose you're right, she said. It's just scary, you know? I've never not worked since I was 16. I know, but you don't have to be scared. I'm here for you. We're going to be fine. Are you sure? Even without my income, we can really afford everything? Absolutely. Better than fine, actually. I've been thinking maybe we should take a vacation. Go somewhere exotic, celebrate this new chapter in our lives. A vacation. While she was supposedly devastated about losing her job, Alexander wanted to celebrate. The man's capacity for self-deception was stunning. That sounds nice, she said. But can we really afford it right now? Trust me, money isn't going to be a problem. I've got everything handled. After Alexander hung up, Simone sat staring at her phone. Trust me. Money isn't going to be a problem. I've got everything handled. He had everything handled because he had been stealing from their joint accounts for months. He had everything handled because he was planning to divorce her after she had been out of work long enough to lose her professional momentum and her confidence. He had everything handled because he had a younger woman helping him plan every detail of his betrayal. But Alexander had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated his wife. At noon, Simone met Patricia at a small cafe across town. Patricia was a small, sharp-eyed woman who had spent 15 years as a police detective before starting her own private investigation firm. She specialized in cases involving financial fraud and marital infidelity, and she had a reputation for being thorough and discreet. Tell me everything, Patricia said as soon as they were seated. Simone laid out the entire story, from her growing suspicions to the fake phone call to the conversation she had overheard. Patricia listened without interruption, taking notes on a small tablet. So they're planning to wait until you've been out of work for several months, then file for divorce when you're in the weakest possible position, Patricia summarized. And in the meantime, he's been moving money out of your joint accounts. That's what it looks like. But I need to know for sure. I need documentation, evidence, everything. I can help you with that. But first, let me ask you something. What do you want the outcome to be? Simone had been thinking about this question all morning. I want to protect myself financially. I want to expose them both for what they really are. And I want to make sure they can't do this to anyone else. Revenge, in other words. Justice, Simone corrected. They think they're so clever, but they're about to learn that I'm not the naive, trusting wife they think I am. Patricia smiled. I like you already. Here's what we're going to do. For the next hour, Patricia outlined a comprehensive investigation plan. They would document Alexander's financial transfers, gather evidence of his affair with Rebecca, and research Rebecca's history with her previous husbands. They would set up surveillance to track their movements and communications. Most importantly, they would do all of this while Simone continued to play the role of the devastated, dependent wife. The key is to let them think their plan is working, Patricia explained. The more confident they become, the more careless they'll be. And the more evidence we'll be able to gather. How long will this take? 2 to 3 months to get everything we need. Can you maintain the act that long? Simone thought about Alexander's smug satisfaction when she had told him about losing her job. She thought about Rebecca's fake sympathy at the Christmas party. She thought about the two of them planning her destruction while she slept beside her husband, trusting and unaware. "I can maintain it as long as necessary," she said. That evening, Simone arrived home to find Alexander in the kitchen, cooking dinner. He was humming while he worked, clearly in a good mood. "Something smells good," she said, hanging up her coat. "I thought we should celebrate," he said. "I made reservations at Chez Laurent for tomorrow night. I figured you could use a nice dinner after the day you've had." Chez Laurent was the most expensive restaurant in the city. A place they had only been to twice in their entire marriage, both times for major anniversaries. "That's sweet of you, but are you sure we should be spending money on expensive dinners right now? I told you don't worry about money. Everything is under control." Alexander turned around and smiled at her, and for a moment, Simone saw the man she had fallen in love with 10 years ago. Handsome, confident, successful. She remembered their first date, how nervous he had been, how he had spilled wine on his shirt and laughed at himself. She remembered their wedding day, how he had cried when she walked down the aisle. Had any of it been real? Or had she been married to a stranger this whole time? "I cleaned out my office today," she said, settling into her role. "It was harder than I expected." "I'm sure it was. But you know what? I think this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to us." "Really? How so?" "Well, for one thing, we'll get to spend more time together. And for another, you'll finally have time to focus on what really matters." "What really matters?" "Our marriage. Our future family. Our future family." The phrase that had once filled her with hope now sounded like a trap. Alexander wanted her pregnant and financially dependent, completely under his control. "I'd like that," she said, lying smoothly. "I've been thinking about it a lot lately." "Good. 'Cause I've been thinking about it too. Maybe we should start trying soon." The casual way he said it made her feel nauseous. Alexander wanted to get her pregnant while he was planning to divorce her. He wanted to complicate her life as much as possible before he abandoned her. "Maybe we should," she agreed. "But I should probably get established in a new routine first. Figure out what I want to do with my life now that I'm not working. There's no rush to figure anything out. Take your time. Enjoy being free for a while." Free. As if unemployment was freedom rather than vulnerability. During dinner, Alexander was more attentive than he had been in months. He asked about her day, complimented her appearance, told her jokes. He was performing the role of the loving, supportive husband, and he was doing it well. But Simone could see through the performance now. She could see the calculation behind his kindness, the strategy behind his support. Every gesture was designed to make her more dependent, more trusting, more vulnerable. After dinner, they sat on the couch watching television. Alexander put his arm around her and she leaned into him, playing her part. But inside she was planning. She was thinking about all the ways she was going to destroy the life he thought he was building with Rebecca. "I love you," Alexander said suddenly, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I love you too," she replied automatically. But as she said the words, Simone realized they were no longer true. She had loved Alexander once, deeply and completely. But the man she had loved was gone, replaced by a stranger who saw her as nothing more than an obstacle to overcome. The man sitting beside her was not her husband. He was her enemy. And she was going to treat him accordingly. 3 days after the fake firing, Simone found herself standing in Alexander's study at 2 a.m., wearing rubber gloves and holding a small flashlight. She had waited until she was certain he was deeply asleep before creeping downstairs to begin her real investigation. Alexander's study was his private sanctuary, a room she had rarely entered during their marriage. He had always claimed he needed the space to work on sensitive client files, and she had respected his privacy. Now she realized that respect had been a mistake. The room was neat and organized, with a large oak desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and a leather chair that Alexander had inherited from his father. But Simone wasn't interested in the obvious places. She was looking for hiding spots, places where someone might keep documents they didn't want their spouse to find. She started with the desk drawers. The first 3 contained exactly what she expected: office supplies, client files, tax documents. But the bottom drawer was locked. Simone smiled grimly. In her experience, people who locked drawers usually had something worth hiding. The lock was simple, the kind that came standard with office furniture. Simone had learned to pick basic locks during college, a skill she had picked up from a boyfriend who had been studying criminal justice. She had never imagined she would use it on her own husband's desk. It took her less than 5 minutes to open the drawer. Inside, she found a manila folder labeled personal confidential, in Alexander's handwriting. Her heart raced as she opened it. The first document was a bank statement for an account she had never seen before. The account was in Alexander's name only, and it contained $127,000. According to the statement, the account had been opened 6 months ago with a deposit of $15,000, and it had been growing steadily with regular transfers from their joint accounts. The second document was a credit report for Rebecca Martinez. Alexander had obtained Rebecca's credit report, which meant he had access to her social security number and other personal information. The report showed that Rebecca had excellent credit but very little in terms of assets. She rented a small apartment, drove a leased car, and had less than $3,000 in savings. The third document made Simone's blood run cold. It was a printout of an email exchange between Alexander and a divorce attorney named Robert Steinberg. The emails were dated from 2 weeks ago. "Mr. Steinberg," Alexander had written, "I would like to schedule a consultation to discuss filing for divorce from my wife. I want to ensure that I protect my assets and minimize any financial obligations. My wife has been the primary breadwinner in our marriage, but she recently lost her job, which changes the financial dynamics significantly." The attorney's response had been professional but telling. "Mr. Carter, I would be happy to discuss your options. In cases where there has been a significant change in income, timing can be crucial. I recommend we meet soon to discuss strategy." Strategy. Her husband had been developing a legal strategy to divorce her. But it was the fourth document that made her hands shake with rage. It was a handwritten note in Alexander's writing, apparently a list of talking points for his meeting with the divorce attorney. Lost job, now financially dependent. Marriage problems due to her work obsession. No children to complicate custody. House in both names, but I can prove I paid mortgage. Her retirement account substantial but legally separate. Need to establish timeline for filing. R. Willing to testify about SS emotional instability. Emotional instability. Rebecca was planning to testify that Simone was emotionally unstable. They were going to paint her as an unstable woman who had lost her job and become financially dependent on her husband. The fifth document was a love letter from Rebecca to Alexander, printed from an email account Simone didn't recognize. "My darling Alexander, I can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. I know this is hard, but everything we're doing is necessary. Simone has had her turn at happiness, and now it's time for us to have ours. I love you more than I've ever loved anyone, and I can't wait to be your wife. Soon we'll have everything we want and we'll never have to think about her again. All my love, Rebecca." Simone sat back in Alexander's chair, staring at the letter. Rebecca wanted to be Alexander's wife. She wanted to take everything Simone had worked for, everything she had built, and she wanted to erase Simone from Alexander's life completely. The final document was a timeline, written in Alexander's handwriting. Month 1, S. Loses job, becomes financially dependent. Month 2-3, establish pattern of S. Being unstable/unable to work. Month 4. File for divorce, claiming irreconcilable differences. Month 5-6. Negotiate settlement from position of strength. Month 7. Marry R. 7 months. In 7 months, Alexander planned to be married to Rebecca, living in the house he had shared with Simone, enjoying the life he had built with her money and her support. Simone photographed every document with her phone, then carefully returned everything to the drawer exactly as she had found it. She relocked the drawer and crept back upstairs, her mind racing with what she had discovered. Back in the guest bedroom, she sat on the bed and scrolled through the photos on her phone. The evidence was overwhelming. Alexander and Rebecca weren't just having an affair. They were engaged in a carefully planned conspiracy to defraud her. But as she looked at the timeline, something occurred to her. According to Alexander's plan, they were still in month 1. She had supposedly lost her job only 3 days ago. That gave her 6 months to turn the tables on them. 6 months to destroy their lives the way they were planning to destroy hers. The next morning, Simone woke up with a plan. She would continue to play the role of the devastated, dependent wife, but she would also begin her own strategy. She would let Alexander and Rebecca believe they were in control while she gathered evidence and prepared her counterattack. At breakfast, Alexander was reading the newspaper while she made coffee. He looked up when she entered the kitchen, and his expression was perfectly crafted concern. "How are you feeling today?" he asked. "Better, I think. I've been thinking about what you said about this being an opportunity." "Really? That's good to hear. I think maybe you're right. Maybe I have been too focused on work. Maybe this is a chance to focus on other things." Alexander's smile was genuine now. I'm glad you're starting to see it that way. I was thinking I might start looking into some volunteer work. Something to keep me busy while I figure out what I want to do next. That's a great idea. There's no rush to figure anything out. I also thought maybe we could start talking about starting a family. I mean, if I'm not working, this might be the perfect time. Alexander's eyes lit up. I would love that. I've been hoping you'd say that. Of course he had been hoping for that. A pregnant wife would be even more vulnerable and dependent than an unemployed wife. Should we start trying? She asked, hating herself for the words. Whenever you're ready. I think I'm ready now. That afternoon, Simone called Patricia and asked to meet urgently. They met at a different cafe this time, one across town where there was no chance of being seen by anyone who knew either of them. I found everything, Simone said without preamble, sliding her phone across the table. Photos of all the documents in his locked drawer. Patricia scrolled through the images, her expression growing darker with each one. This is incredible. They've documented their entire plan. It's worse than I thought. They want to paint me as emotionally unstable. Rebecca is planning to testify against me in the divorce proceedings. That's ambitious of her, considering she's committing adultery with a married man. There's more. Look at that timeline. They're planning to be married 7 months from now. Patricia studied the timeline photo. So they're planning a quick divorce and an even quicker remarriage. That suggests they're confident about their strategy. Too confident. They think I'm completely naive. Good. Overconfidence makes people careless. Patricia leaned forward. But I have to ask, are you sure you want to go through with this? What you're talking about isn't just protecting yourself. It's total warfare. Simone thought about the love letter from Rebecca, about the casual way Alexander had suggested she start trying to get pregnant while he was planning to divorce her. They declared war on me first. I'm just fighting back. Okay. Then here's what we're going to do. Over the next 2 hours, Patricia outlined a comprehensive plan. They would document every aspect of Alexander and Rebecca's affair, gather evidence of the financial fraud, and build a case that would not only protect Simone but completely destroy their reputations and their future together. The key is patience, Patricia explained. We need to let them dig their own graves. The more confident they become, the more evidence they'll give us. How long will this take? 3 to 4 months to gather everything we need. Can you maintain the act that long? Simone thought about Alexander's timeline. Month 4 was when he planned to file for divorce. I can maintain it as long as necessary. That evening, Simone arrived home to find Alexander in an unusually good mood. He had flowers on the kitchen table and a bottle of wine open. What's the occasion? She asked. I thought we should celebrate our new beginning, he said, pouring her a glass of wine. To the future. To the future, she echoed, clinking her glass against his. As they sat down to dinner, Alexander was more talkative than he had been in months. He asked about her day, told her about his work, and seemed genuinely interested in her responses. It was a convincing performance of the loving husband, but Simone could see through it now. I've been thinking about what we talked about this morning, Alexander said as they were finishing dinner. About starting a family. Oh. I think you're right. This is the perfect time. You're not stressed about work, we're financially stable and we're both ready. Financially stable because he had been stealing from their joint accounts. Ready because he thought she was completely under his control. I'm glad you feel that way, she said. I've been thinking about it all day. Good. Because I made an appointment for you. Simone's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. An appointment? With Dr. Rodriguez. For a physical. I thought you should get checked out before we start trying. A physical. Alexander wanted her to get a physical to make sure she was healthy enough to get pregnant. The man's audacity was breathtaking. That's very thoughtful of you, she said carefully. When is the appointment? Friday morning. I already cleared it with your schedule. Her schedule. As if she had a schedule now that she was supposedly unemployed. I appreciate you thinking of everything, she said. I just want to make sure we do this right. I want us to have the best possible chance of success. Success. Getting his wife pregnant while he was planning to divorce her was success. After dinner they watched television together on the couch. Alexander was affectionate, holding her hand, stroking her hair. But every touch felt like a betrayal, every kiss felt like a lie. I love you, he said as they were getting ready for bed. I love you too, she replied, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. But as she lay in bed beside him, listening to him breathe in the darkness, Simone felt a cold satisfaction settle in her chest. Alexander and Rebecca thought they were so clever, but they had made a crucial mistake. They had underestimated her intelligence, her resourcefulness, and her capacity for strategic thinking. They wanted to play games with her life. They wanted to manipulate her, betray her, and destroy her. Fine. She would show them what real manipulation looked like. The next morning, Simone made 3 phone calls. The first was to her doctor, to reschedule the appointment Alexander had made without her knowledge. The second was to her lawyer, to discuss her options for protecting her assets. The third was to Patricia to accelerate their timeline. I want to move faster, she told Patricia. I want to give them enough rope to hang themselves, but I don't want to wait 4 months. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we push them into making mistakes. Make them overconfident, make them careless. That's risky. If they suspect you know something. They won't suspect anything. They think I'm too naive and trusting to figure out what they're doing. And if you're wrong? Simone thought about the timeline in Alexander's drawer, about Rebecca's letter, about the casual way Alexander had suggested she get pregnant while he was planning to abandon her. I'm not wrong, she said. And even if I am, I'd rather go down fighting than let them destroy me without a fight. Okay, Patricia said. Let's give them enough rope to hang themselves. 2 weeks after discovering Alexander's secret files, Simone had fallen into a routine that would have impressed any professional spy. She woke up each morning at 6 a.m., made coffee, and played the role of the devoted wife seeing her husband off to work. Then, as soon as Alexander's car disappeared around the corner, she became someone else entirely. She had transformed the guest bedroom into a command center. She had installed a small safe behind a loose baseboard, where she kept copies of all the evidence she was gathering. She had set up a secure email account using a public library computer, and she had purchased a burner phone that she kept hidden in her car. Patricia's investigation was proceeding faster than either of them had anticipated. Alexander and Rebecca were being remarkably careless, apparently confident that Simone was too heartbroken and confused to notice anything suspicious. Look at this, Patricia said, sliding a folder across the table at their weekly meeting. They were at a different location again, this time a small diner on the outskirts of town. Your husband is getting sloppy. Simone opened the folder and found a series of photographs. The first showed Alexander and Rebecca entering a hotel together during lunch hour. The second showed them leaving the same hotel 2 hours later. The third showed them having dinner at an expensive restaurant across town, sitting close together and holding hands. He's not even trying to hide it anymore, Simone observed. Because he thinks you're too devastated to notice. According to my sources, he's been telling people at work that you're having a hard time adjusting to unemployment, that you're becoming withdrawn and depressed. Depressed. He's building a narrative. The successful career woman who falls apart when she loses her job. The loving husband who tries to help but can't get through to her. Simone felt sick. He's setting up his defense for the divorce. Exactly. And Rebecca is helping him. She's been very vocal about her concern for your well-being. She's been asking Alexander's colleagues if they think you might need professional help. Professional help? Therapy. Maybe medication. She's planting seeds, making people think you're unstable. Simone stared at the photographs. How long have you been following them? 2 weeks. They meet at the hotel twice a week, usually during lunch. They have dinner together every Friday night, always at restaurants where they're unlikely to run into anyone you know. What about the financial investigation? Patricia pulled out another folder. This is where it gets interesting. Alexander has been moving money, but he's been doing it in small amounts to avoid detection. However, he's made one significant mistake. What kind of mistake? He opened a joint account with Rebecca 3 weeks ago. They've been using it to pay for their hotels, their dinners, their little romantic getaways. But more importantly, they've been using it to pay for legal consultations. Legal consultations? Alexander has been to see 3 different divorce attorneys. Rebecca has been with him to 2 of those meetings. Simone felt a chill run down her spine. She's been with him to meet with divorce attorneys? As his fiancée. They've been presenting themselves as an engaged couple who need legal advice about how to handle his complicated divorce. His complicated divorce. They're telling the attorneys that you're emotionally unstable, that you've become financially dependent since losing your job, and that you might try to make the divorce difficult out of spite. Simone sat back in her chair, trying to process what she was hearing. They're not just planning to divorce me. They're planning to destroy my reputation in the process. It gets worse. I did some more digging into Rebecca's background. Remember her first husband, the doctor? Yes. He didn't just divorce her. He filed criminal charges against her for financial fraud. She had been forging his signature on checks, transferring money to accounts he didn't know about. The charges were eventually dropped as part of the divorce settlement, but the pattern is clear. She's done this before. Multiple times. Her second husband's divorce was even messier. She had convinced him to put her name on all his accounts, then she cleaned them out and disappeared for 3 months. By the time he tracked her down, she had already spent most of the money. And now she's doing it to Alexander. And Alexander is helping her do it to you. The irony is beautiful actually. He thinks he's the one in control, but she's playing him just as hard as they're both playing you. Simone looked at the photographs again. Alexander and Rebecca, holding hands over dinner, looking into each other's eyes. They looked happy, content, completely confident in their plan. What's their timeline now? She asked. Based on what I've observed, they're moving faster than originally planned. I think they're going to file for divorce within the next 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Alexander has been telling people at work that you're getting worse, that you're becoming increasingly difficult to live with. He's building urgency, making it seem like the marriage is falling apart quickly. But according to his original timeline, he was going to wait until I'd been unemployed for several months. Plans change. Maybe they're getting impatient. Maybe they're worried about getting caught. Or maybe Rebecca is pushing him to move faster. Simone thought about this. If they're moving faster, we need to move faster too. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to start pushing back. Subtly, but enough to make them nervous. Patricia looked concerned. That's dangerous. If they suspect you know something. They won't suspect anything. But I want to start planting some seeds of doubt between them. Make them question each other's motives. How? Simone had been thinking about this for days. Rebecca has a history of taking men for everything they're worth. Alexander has a history of being naive about women. If I can make him start to question whether Rebecca really loves him or just wants his money, I can drive a wedge between them. And if that doesn't work, then I'll try something else. But I'm not going to sit back and let them destroy my life without a fight. That evening, Simone put her plan into action. She was in the kitchen when Alexander came home from work, and she made sure to look particularly vulnerable and sad. How was your day? He asked, loosening his tie. Difficult, she said, not looking up from the vegetables she was chopping. I'm starting to wonder if I'll ever find another job. Don't worry about that. I told you we're fine financially. I know, but I feel so useless. I feel like I'm not contributing anything to our marriage. Alexander came up behind her and put his hands on her shoulders. You're contributing plenty. You're my wife. That's enough. Is it really? I mean, don't you think you deserve someone who can be a real partner? Someone who can contribute financially. Don't talk like that. I love you just the way you are. Even if I never work again? Even if I'm always dependent on you? Even then. Simone leaned back against him, playing the role of the grateful wife. I'm so lucky to have you. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'll never have to find out. But as Alexander held her, Simone was thinking about Rebecca. She was thinking about the joint account, the hotel meetings, the legal consultations. She was thinking about how she could use all of that information to destroy them both. Alexander, she said suddenly, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever think about what would happen if something happened to me? I mean, you're so successful, so attractive. You could have anyone you wanted. Why would you ask something like that? I don't know. I guess I've been feeling insecure lately. Like maybe you'd be better off without me. That's crazy. I would never be better off without you. But if something did happen, if we did get divorced or something, you'd find someone else eventually, right? Someone younger, maybe. Someone who could give you the family you want. Alexander was quiet for a moment. I don't want to think about that. I'm just saying if that ever happened, you'd want to make sure you found someone who really loved you for you, not just for your money. What do you mean? I mean, you're a successful man now. You have money, status, security. You'd want to make sure that if you found someone new, they weren't just using you. I would never let anyone use me. I know. But sometimes it's hard to tell, isn't it? Sometimes people can be very good at hiding their true motives. Alexander was quiet, and Simone could feel him thinking about what she had said. She had planted the seed. Now she just had to wait for it to grow. Over the next few days, Simone continued her subtle campaign. She made casual comments about relationships where women had taken advantage of men. She mentioned articles she had supposedly read about gold diggers. She talked about how important it was to really know someone before trusting them completely. And slowly she began to see the effect. Alexander became more thoughtful, more observant. He started asking questions about Rebecca that he had never asked before. He started paying attention to things that had never bothered him. "I was talking to Rebecca today," he said one evening. "She was asking about our finances again." "Again?" "She's been asking a lot of questions lately. About our house, our savings, our investments." "That's odd. Why would she be asking about our finances?" "I don't know. She says she's just curious about how married couples handle money." That does seem like a strange thing to be curious about." "You think so?" "Well, I mean, why would a single woman be so interested in how married couples handle their finances? Unless what? Unless she's thinking about getting married herself. Maybe she's trying to figure out what kind of financial situation she'd want to be in." Alexander was quiet for a long moment. "You think she's seeing someone?" "I don't know. But it would make sense, wouldn't it? Why else would she be so interested in our money?" Simone could see the wheels turning in Alexander's head. For the first time he was questioning Rebecca's motives. He was starting to wonder if she really loved him or if she was just using him. It was a small victory, but it was a start. The next week, Patricia called with news that made Simone's blood run cold. "They've accelerated their timeline again," Patricia said. "Alexander met with his attorney yesterday. They're planning to file for divorce next week." "Next week?" Rebecca was with him. "They're rushing everything." "What? What's changed?" "I don't know, but something has them spooked. Maybe they're worried about getting caught, or maybe they just want to move forward." "Do you think they suspect something?" "I don't think so. But something has definitely changed." Simone sat in her car in the parking lot of the grocery store, trying to process what Patricia had told her. Next week. Alexander was going to file for divorce next week, barely a month after her supposed job loss. But as the initial shock wore off, Simone felt something else. Relief. She was tired of pretending, tired of playing the role of the naive wife. She was ready to fight back. "Patricia," she said, "I think it's time to take the gloves off." "What do you mean?" "I mean it's time to stop gathering evidence and start using it." "They want to play hardball? Let's show them what hardball really looks like." "Are you sure you're ready for that?" "I've been ready for weeks. The question is, are you ready to help me destroy them?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. "What did you have in mind?" "I'm thinking we give them exactly what they want. We let them file for divorce. We let them think they're winning. And then? And then we show them what a real strategic mind can do." The divorce papers arrived on a Wednesday morning, delivered by a courier who asked for Simone's signature with the kind of professional detachment that suggested he had done this many times before. Simone signed for the envelope, thanked the courier, and closed the door behind him. She stood in her foyer, holding the thick manila envelope, feeling strangely calm. This was it. The moment she had been preparing for, the moment when Alexander and Rebecca's carefully planned betrayal became official. She opened the envelope and read through the documents. The legal language was dense and formal, but the message was clear. Alexander was filing for divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences. He was seeking an equitable division of assets, with considerations for his wife's recent job loss and emotional instability. Emotional instability. There it was, in black and white. Alexander was claiming that she had become emotionally unstable since losing her job, that she had become difficult to live with, that their marriage had become unsalvageable. The papers also requested that Simone vacate the marital home within 30 days, claiming that her continued presence would be detrimental to both parties' emotional well-being. Alexander wanted her out of the house, out of his life, and out of his way so he could move forward with Rebecca. Simone read through the documents twice, then carefully photographed each page and sent them to Patricia. Then she sat down at her kitchen table and began to plan her response. The first thing she did was call her own attorney, Margaret Jonas, whom she had been consulting secretly for the past month. Margaret was a skilled divorce attorney with a reputation for protecting her clients' interests, even in the most complicated cases. "The papers just arrived," Simone told her. "Everything is exactly as we expected." "Good. That means our strategy is still viable. Are you ready to proceed?" "I'm ready." "Remember, from this point forward, every conversation you have with Alexander could potentially be used in court. Be careful what you say." "I understand." "And Simone? Don't let him see you coming. Let him think he's winning right up until the moment we destroy him." After hanging up with Margaret, Simone sat in her kitchen and waited. She knew Alexander would call soon, probably to gauge her reaction to the divorce papers. She needed to be ready to give him exactly the reaction he was expecting. The call came 3 hours later. "Simone," Alexander said, his voice carefully modulated to sound regretful. "I'm sure you've received the papers by now." "I have." She made her voice sound small, defeated. I'm sorry it had to come to this. But I think this is best for both of us. I don't understand. I thought we were working through things. I thought we were going to start a family. We were. But things have changed. You've changed. Ever since you lost your job, you've been different. Distant. Depressed. I'm not depressed. I'm just adjusting. I know you think that, but I'm worried about you. I think you need professional help. Professional help. Just as Patricia had predicted. I don't need help. I need my husband to support me through a difficult time. I've been trying to support you. But you've been pushing me away. You've been angry and suspicious and difficult to live with. Angry and suspicious. Alexander was already building his case, establishing the narrative that would justify his actions in court. I haven't been any of those things, Simone protested, making her voice sound hurt and confused. You have. And I can't live like this anymore. I think we both need space to figure out what we want. What I want is to save our marriage. Sometimes marriages can't be saved. Sometimes the best thing you can do is let go. Is there someone else? The question came out more sharply than she had intended. What? No, of course not. This is about us, about the problems in our marriage. I just thought. I don't know. You've been different lately too. More distant. Working late more often. I've been working late because I've been trying to provide for us. Because I've been worried about our finances with you not working. Our finances are fine. You said so yourself. They're fine. But that doesn't mean I don't worry. Simone let silence stretch between them for a moment. So what happens now? Now we both get lawyers and we work out the details. I want this to be as amicable as possible. Amicable. Alexander wanted to steal everything she had worked for, destroy her reputation, and abandon her for another woman, and he wanted it to be amicable. I don't know if I can afford a lawyer, she said. I don't have a job, remember? I'll help you find someone. Someone reasonable. Someone reasonable. Someone who wouldn't fight too hard for her interests. That's generous of you. I don't want to hurt you, Simone. I want what's best for both of us. What's best for me is staying married to you. No, it's not. You just don't see it yet. After Alexander hung up, Simone sat in her kitchen and let herself feel the full weight of what was happening. Her marriage was over. The man she had loved for 10 years, the man she had supported through law school and the early years of his career, the man she had trusted with her heart and her future, was throwing her away like garbage. But the hurt was mixed with something else now. Anticipation. Alexander and Rebecca thought they were so clever, but they had no idea what was coming for them. That evening, Simone called her sister Lauren, who lived in Seattle. I need to ask you a favor, Simone said. A big one. What's going on? Alexander is divorcing me. And I need somewhere to stay while I figure out my next move. Oh my God. Simone, I'm so sorry. What happened? It's complicated. But I need to get out of here for a while. Can I come stay with you? Of course. For as long as you need. Thank you. I'll be there in a few days. Are you okay? You sound different. I'm angry. But I'm also determined. Alexander thinks he's won, but he has no idea what's coming. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not going to let him destroy me without a fight. I'm going to show him what happens when you underestimate Simone Carter. The next morning, Simone began the final phase of her plan. She called Patricia and asked her to meet urgently. I'm leaving town, she told Patricia when they met at their usual cafe. I'm going to stay with my sister in Seattle for a few weeks. That's probably smart. Give yourself some distance from all this. But I need you to keep monitoring Alexander and Rebecca. I want to know everything they do while I'm gone. What are you thinking? I'm thinking they're going to get careless. They're going to think they've won and they're going to start making mistakes. And when they do? When they do, we're going to be ready. Simone handed Patricia a sealed envelope. This contains everything I've gathered so far. Bank statements, photographs, copies of emails. If something happens to me, I want you to give this to my attorney. Nothing's going to happen to you. I know. But I want to be careful. That afternoon, Simone began packing her bags. She was careful to pack only what she would need for a few weeks, leaving most of her belongings behind. She wanted Alexander to think she was running away, that she was broken and defeated. She was in the bedroom when she heard Alexander's car in the driveway. He was home early, probably to see how she was handling the divorce papers. Simone, he called from downstairs. Are you here? Upstairs, she called back. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, and then he appeared in the doorway of their bedroom. He looked around, taking in the open suitcase on the bed, the clothes scattered around the room. "Are you going somewhere?" he asked. "I'm going to stay with Lauren for a while. I need some space to think." "That's probably a good idea. Some distance might help both of us. I don't know when I'll be back. Take as long as you need." Alexander stood in the doorway watching her pack. He looked uncomfortable, as if he wanted to say something but didn't know how. "Simone," he said finally, "I want you to know that I never wanted to hurt you." She looked up at him, this man who had been her husband for 7 years, who had shared her bed and her dreams and her secrets. He looked sincere, as if he genuinely believed what he was saying. "But you are hurting me," she said quietly. "You're destroying our marriage, our life together. You're abandoning me when I need you most." "I'm not abandoning you. I'm doing what I think is best for both of us." "What you think is best for both of us is for you to divorce me and move on with your life?" "Yes. I know you don't understand now, but someday you'll thank me for this." "Thank him." Alexander thought she would someday thank him for betraying her, for stealing from her, for planning to destroy her reputation and her future. "Maybe you're right," she said, turning back to her packing. "Maybe someday I'll understand." "I hope so." "Alexander?" "Yes." "When you find someone new, and I know you will, just be careful. Make sure they love you for the right reasons." "What do you mean?" "I mean you're a successful man now. You have money, status, security. Just make sure whoever you end up with loves you for who you are, not what you can give them." Alexander was quiet for a moment. "Why would you say that?" "Because I love you. And I don't want to see you get hurt." It was a masterful performance. Simone managed to sound sincere and caring, like a wife who was concerned about her husband's future happiness even as he was destroying her life. "I appreciate that," Alexander said. "But I'm not worried about that." "Good. I'm glad you're confident." "I am." But Simone could see the doubt in his eyes. Her subtle campaign of the past few weeks had worked. Alexander was starting to question Rebecca's motives, starting to wonder if she really loved him or if she was just using him. That evening, Simone had her last dinner in the house she had shared with Alexander. They sat at the kitchen table, eating in relative silence, both of them lost in their own thoughts. "I'll miss this," Simone said finally. "Miss what?" "This. Having dinner together, talking about our days. Being married. I'll miss it too. Will you? Or will you be relieved?" "I'll miss the good parts. The parts that worked." "What parts didn't work?" Alexander was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. It just feels like we grew apart. Like we wanted different things." "What did you want that I didn't?" "I wanted a wife who was present, who was focused on our marriage instead of her career. And I wanted a husband who respected my career and supported my ambitions." "I did support your ambitions." "Did you? Or did you just tolerate them?" "I don't know. Maybe both." It was the most honest conversation they had had in months. And it was completely pointless because Alexander had already made his choice. He had chosen Rebecca, chosen the fantasy of a different life, chosen to betray everything they had built together. "I should finish packing," Simone said, standing up from the table. "Simone," Alexander said as she reached the kitchen door. "I really am sorry. I never wanted things to end this way." "I know," she said. "But they have ended this way. And now we both have to live with the consequences." "What do you mean?" "I mean that choices have consequences. And someday we'll both have to face the consequences of the choices we've made." Alexander looked confused, but Simone didn't elaborate. She went upstairs to finish packing, leaving him to wonder what she meant. The next morning, Simone loaded her car and prepared to leave. Alexander was already gone, having left early for work. She was glad. She didn't want to have to say goodbye to him. As she drove away from the house, Simone looked in her rearview mirror and saw the life she was leaving behind. The house where she had been happy, where she had built a marriage and a future with a man she had loved completely. But she wasn't sad. She was angry. And she was determined. Alexander and Rebecca thought they had won. They thought they had successfully destroyed her life and cleared the way for their own happiness. They were wrong. The real game was just beginning. From her sister's apartment in Seattle, Simone watched Alexander and Rebecca's life unfold like a carefully choreographed dance. Patricia's daily reports arrived via encrypted email, each one revealing new details about how quickly the couple was moving to build their new life together. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore," Patricia reported during one of their secure video calls. "Rebecca moved into the house 3 days after you left. She's been posting photos on social media, showing off her new home to her friends." Simone stared at the photos on her laptop screen. Rebecca in the kitchen she had designed, Rebecca in the garden she had planted, Rebecca in the bedroom she had shared with Alexander for 7 years. What about Alexander? How's he handling the transition? That's where it gets interesting. He's acting like everything is perfect, but I can see the cracks. He's been asking Rebecca a lot of questions about her past, about her previous relationships. Your little comments about gold diggers really got to him. Good. What kind of questions? He asked her about her ex-husbands. He asked her about her finances. He even asked her why she was so interested in your household income back when you were married. And how did she respond? She got defensive. Really defensive. She accused him of not trusting her, of letting you poison his mind against her. Simone felt a flicker of satisfaction. They're fighting? Not exactly fighting, but there's definitely tension. And it's getting worse. How so? Rebecca has been pushing Alexander to speed up the divorce proceedings. She wants everything finalized as quickly as possible so they can get married. But Alexander is starting to wonder why she's in such a hurry. Because she's done this before and she knows that the longer she waits, the more likely she is to get caught. Exactly. But Alexander doesn't know that. He's starting to think she's more interested in becoming Mrs. Alexander Carter than she is in actually being with him. Simone leaned back in her chair, processing this information. What about the money situation? That's where things get really interesting. Rebecca has been spending freely using the joint account they set up. Expensive clothes, jewelry, spa treatments. She's been living like a wealthy woman, but Alexander is starting to notice. How much has she spent? Almost $15,000 in 3 weeks. And Alexander is asking questions about that too. What kind of questions? He asked her why she needed so many new clothes. He asked her why she was getting her hair done at the most expensive salon in town. He asked her why she was charging expensive dinners to their joint account when they were eating at home. And she told him she was trying to look good for him. She said she wanted to be the kind of wife he deserved. The kind of wife he deserved. That's rich. But here's the thing, I don't think Alexander is buying it anymore. He's been asking his friends about her, asking if they think she's genuine. His friends? His law firm colleagues. And they're starting to tell him things that are making him uncomfortable. What kind of things? One of them knows about her first husband, the doctor. He told Alexander that Rebecca cleaned the guy out in the divorce. Simone sat up straighter. Really? Really? And another colleague mentioned that Rebecca has been asking a lot of questions about the firm's finances, about how much money the partners make. She's been investigating his financial situation. Just like she did with her previous husbands. The pattern is becoming obvious to everyone except Alexander. Simone was quiet for a moment, thinking. Patricia, I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to accelerate Rebecca's timeline. I need her to push Alexander harder, make more demands, spend more money. How am I supposed to do that? By making her insecure. By making her think Alexander is having second thoughts. That's dangerous. If she suspects we're manipulating the situation, she won't suspect anything. She's too focused on getting what she wants to see the bigger picture. What do you have in mind? Simone had been thinking about this for days. I want you to plant some information. Make it look like Alexander has been asking around about prenuptial agreements. Prenups? Rebecca's worst nightmare. If Alexander starts talking about protecting his assets before they get married, she'll panic. She'll push harder, make more demands, and Alexander will start to see her true nature. And if Alexander actually does decide to get a prenup? He won't. He's too proud, too confident in his ability to judge people. But the suggestion that he's thinking about it will be enough to send Rebecca into overdrive. Patricia was quiet for a moment. This is getting complicated. Good. Complicated situations make people reveal who they really are. Okay. I'll figure out a way to plant the information. But Simone, you need to be prepared for the possibility that this could backfire. How? If Rebecca gets desperate enough, she might do something drastic. She might try to lock Alexander down by getting pregnant, or she might try to access his accounts before he has a chance to protect them. Then we'll be ready for that too. After the call, Simone sat in her sister's living room, looking out at the Seattle skyline. Lauren was at work, and the apartment was quiet except for the sound of rain against the windows. She thought about Alexander and Rebecca, living in her house, sleeping in her bed, planning their future together while her divorce was still pending. She thought about how confident they must feel, how certain they were that they had outsmarted her. That evening, Simone called her attorney, Margaret Jonas. How are things progressing with the divorce? Simone asked. Alexander's attorney is pushing for a quick settlement. They want everything resolved within the next month. A month? That's very fast. Suspiciously fast. They're offering you a relatively generous settlement, considering the circumstances. How generous? 50% of the house value, half the joint savings, and a lump sum payment of $100,000. That's actually not terrible. No, it's not. Which is why I'm suspicious. Alexander's attorney is known for fighting hard for his clients. The fact that they're offering such a reasonable settlement suggests they're in a hurry to get this done. Why would they be in a hurry? Maybe they're worried about what might come to light if the proceedings drag on. Maybe they want to finalize everything before you have a chance to really examine the finances. Or maybe Rebecca is pushing him to move fast. That's possible too. Either way, I think we should take our time. Examine everything carefully before we agree to anything. I agree. Let's drag this out as long as possible. Are you sure? The longer this takes, the more expensive it gets. I'm sure. I want to see how desperate they get. The next week, Patricia called with news that made Simone smile for the first time in weeks. It worked, Patricia said. Rebecca is in full panic mode. What happened? I had one of my contacts mention to a colleague at Alexander's firm that Alexander had been asking about prenuptial agreement attorneys. Word got back to Rebecca within 24 hours. And she confronted Alexander about it. Demanded to know why he was thinking about a prenup when they were already planning to get married. What did Alexander say? He told her he wasn't thinking about a prenup, that he didn't know where she had heard that. But Rebecca didn't believe him. Good. She accused him of not trusting her, of trying to protect his money from her. She said if he really loved her, he wouldn't need a prenup. Classic manipulation. But here's the best part: Alexander is starting to see it that way too. He told her that her reaction was making him wonder why she was so worried about a prenup if she wasn't planning to take his money. He said that. He did. And Rebecca lost it. She started crying, saying he was treating her like a gold digger, that he was letting his ex-wife poison his mind against her. His ex-wife. I'm not even his ex-wife yet. Legally, no. But emotionally, she's already replaced you. What happened after she started crying? Alexander apologized, said he didn't mean to hurt her feelings. But I could tell he was shaken. He's starting to see the pattern. Every time he questions her about anything, she turns it around and makes herself the victim. How long before he starts to put the pieces together? Not long. Especially if we keep applying pressure. What kind of pressure? I'm thinking we let him discover some of Rebecca's financial history on his own. Maybe he accidentally finds out about her previous divorces, about how much money she walked away with. How do we make that happen? We plant the information where he'll find it. Make it look like an accident. Do it. Over the next 2 weeks, Simone watched from Seattle as Alexander and Rebecca's relationship slowly began to deteriorate. Patricia's reports painted a picture of two people who were increasingly suspicious of each other, increasingly defensive, increasingly desperate. Rebecca had ramped up her spending, charging thousands of dollars to their joint account for clothes, jewelry, and spa treatments. She had also started pushing Alexander to put her name on his individual accounts, claiming that she wanted to feel like a real partner in their relationship. Alexander, meanwhile, had started asking more questions about Rebecca's past. He had looked up her previous husbands online and discovered that both of them were significantly wealthier after their divorces than they had been before. He had also noticed that Rebecca seemed to know an unusual amount about his financial situation for someone who claimed to have no interest in money. They had a huge fight last night, Patricia reported during one of their calls. Rebecca accused Alexander of spying on her, of checking up on her past relationships. Was he spying on her? Not exactly spying. But he has been asking questions. And Rebecca's defensive reaction is making him more suspicious, not less. What was the fight about specifically? Alexander asked her about her first husband's suicide. Simone felt a chill run down her spine. Her first husband committed suicide? 6 months after their divorce was finalized. Alexander found out about it and asked Rebecca why she had never mentioned it. What did she say? She said it was too painful to talk about, that she blamed herself for what happened. But Alexander did some more digging and found out that her first husband had been facing financial ruin after the divorce. He had lost his medical practice, his house, and most of his savings. And Rebecca walked away with half of everything. More than half, according to the court records. She had convinced him to put her name on everything before they got married, then took him for everything he was worth in the divorce. And now she's trying to do the same thing to Alexander. Exactly. And Alexander is starting to figure that out. How much longer do you think it will take? Not long. Maybe a week or two. He's already pulling back from her emotionally. He's been staying late at work, avoiding her calls, making excuses not to come home. And how is Rebecca handling that? Badly. She's becoming more demanding, more controlling. She's been going through his phone, his email, his financial statements. She's acting like a wife who's about to lose everything. Because she is. The irony is beautiful. She's destroying her own relationship by being exactly the kind of person Alexander is starting to suspect she is. That night, Simone called her sister Lauren into the living room. I need to tell you something, Simone said. About why I'm really here. I figured there was more to the story, Lauren said, settling onto the couch beside her. You've been acting like someone planning a war, not someone recovering from a divorce. Because I am planning a war. Alexander didn't just decide to divorce me. He's been planning this for months, stealing money from our joint accounts, setting me up to look unstable and dependent. What? Simone, it's fraud. And he's been doing it with help from his girlfriend, who has done this to 2 other men before him. Simone spent the next hour telling Lauren everything: the fake job loss, the evidence she had found, the timeline for destroying her life, Rebecca's history with her previous husbands. My God, Lauren said when Simone was finished. This is like something out of a movie. I know, but it's real. And they almost got away with it. Almost. They're falling apart. All the pressure we've been applying is working. Alexander is starting to see Rebecca for who she really is, and Rebecca is getting desperate. What happens next? Next I go home. And I finish what they started. Are you sure you're ready for that? Simone thought about Alexander's smug satisfaction when she had told him about losing her job. She thought about Rebecca moving into her house, sleeping in her bed, planning to steal her life. She thought about the timeline in Alexander's drawer, the casual way they had planned to destroy her. I'm ready, she said. It's time to go home and show them what happens when you underestimate Simone Carter. What are you going to do? I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve. The next morning, Simone booked a flight back home. It was time for the final act of the drama that Alexander and Rebecca had started. It was time to end this. Simone returned to her hometown on a gray Thursday morning in October, exactly 5 weeks after she had left for Seattle. The city looked the same, but she felt completely different. She was no longer the heartbroken wife running away from her problems. She was a woman with a plan, returning to claim what was rightfully hers. She checked into a hotel across town, wanting to maintain the element of surprise. Patricia was waiting for her in the lobby, holding a thick folder that contained 5 weeks' worth of evidence. Welcome home, Patricia said, embracing her friend. Are you ready for this? I've been ready for months. They went up to Simone's hotel room, where Patricia spread out dozens of photographs, documents, and surveillance reports across the desk. Here's what's happened since you left, Patricia began. Alexander and Rebecca are barely speaking to each other. She's been staying at the house, but he's been sleeping in the guest room. They had another massive fight 3 days ago when Alexander found out Rebecca had been forging his signature on checks. Forging his signature? She's been writing herself checks from his personal account. Small amounts, but still fraud. Alexander confronted her about it, and she claimed it was a misunderstanding, that she thought they had an agreement about sharing finances. How much money are we talking about? About $8,000 over the past 3 weeks. Not enough to ruin him, but enough to show a clear pattern of theft. What did Alexander do? He changed the passwords on all his accounts and told Rebecca she could only access the joint account they had set up. She did not take that well. Patricia handed Simone a photograph taken through the kitchen window of her former home. It showed Rebecca throwing what appeared to be a plate at Alexander, her face twisted with rage. She's losing control, Simone observed. Completely. And Alexander is finally seeing who she really is. But here's the thing, she's not giving up. She's doubling down. What do you mean? She's been calling his colleagues, his friends, even his family, telling them that Alexander is having some kind of breakdown. She's been saying that he's become paranoid and controlling, that he's accusing her of things she didn't do. She's trying to flip the script. Exactly. She's trying to make him look like the unstable one while she positions herself as the victim. Is it working? With some people, yes. Alexander's mother called him yesterday to ask if he was okay, if he needed help. Rebecca has been very convincing. Simone felt a cold anger settle in her chest. So she's not just trying to steal his money? She's trying to destroy his reputation too. Just like she's been trying to destroy yours. But there's more. Patricia pulled out another set of photographs. These showed Rebecca meeting with a man Simone didn't recognize. Who is that? Daniel Morrison. Rebecca's second ex-husband. Simone stared at the photographs. She's been meeting with her ex-husband? 3 times in the past 2 weeks. And according to my source, they've been discussing Alexander. What kind of discussions? Daniel has been giving Rebecca advice on how to maximize her take from the divorce. He's been coaching her on what to say, how to act, how to position herself for the best possible settlement. So this is a team effort. It looks that way. Daniel Morrison lost a fortune to Rebecca in their divorce, but apparently he's willing to help her do it to someone else. Why would he do that? Maybe he still has feelings for her. Maybe she has something on him. Or maybe he just enjoys the game. Simone studied the photographs more carefully. Rebecca and Daniel looked comfortable together, familiar. In one photo, Daniel had his hand on Rebecca's arm. In another, they were sitting close together, their heads bent over what looked like documents. There's something else, Patricia said. I think Rebecca might be planning to leave Alexander before he can leave her. What makes you think that? She's been moving money out of their joint account. Small amounts but consistent. And she's been asking Daniel about apartments in other cities. She's planning to disappear. That's what it looks like. I think her plan is to take as much money as she can, then vanish before Alexander can stop her. When? Soon. Maybe within the next week or 2. Simone sat back in her chair, processing everything Patricia had told her. Rebecca wasn't just a gold digger. She was a professional con artist, and she had been playing a much more sophisticated game than either Simone or Alexander had realized. Patricia, Simone said slowly, I think it's time to change our strategy. How so? We've been focused on letting them destroy each other. But if Rebecca is planning to disappear with Alexander's money, we need to move faster. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to expose everything. All of it. Rebecca's history, Alexander's planning, the fraud, the theft, everything. That's risky. If we move too fast, we might not have enough evidence to make it stick. We have plenty of evidence. And if we wait much longer, Rebecca is going to disappear with Alexander's money, and we'll never see justice. Okay. How do you want to do this? Simone was quiet for a moment, thinking. I want to do it publicly. I want everyone to see exactly who these people are. What do you mean by publicly? Alexander's firm is having their annual gala next Saturday night. All the partners, their spouses, their clients. Everyone who matters in Alexander's professional world will be there. And I'm going to be there too. Uninvited, but definitely present. Simone, that could backfire spectacularly. Or it could be exactly what we need. One moment, in front of everyone who matters, where I lay out the truth about what Alexander and Rebecca have been doing. You could be charged with harassment, with stalking, with any number of things. Let them try. I have evidence of fraud, theft, and conspiracy. I have documentation of everything they've done. Let them explain that to the police. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Are you absolutely sure about this? I'm sure. I'm tired of hiding, tired of playing games, tired of letting them think they've won. It's time to show them what real strategic thinking looks like. Okay. But we need to be smart about this. We need to make sure we have everything documented, everything organized, everything ready to present. We will. And Patricia? Yes. I want you to contact Daniel Morrison. I want to know exactly what he and Rebecca have been planning. How do you want me to approach him? Tell him you're a private investigator working for a client who's considering marrying Rebecca. Ask him if he'd be willing to share his experiences with her. You think he'll talk? I think a man who lost everything to a woman might be willing to warn someone else about what she's capable of. That afternoon, Simone drove past her former home. Alexander's car wasn't in the driveway, but Rebecca's was. The house looked the same from the outside, but Simone could see that Rebecca had made changes. New curtains in the living room, different plants on the front porch, a decorative flag by the front door that Simone had never seen before. Rebecca was making the house her own, erasing Simone's presence and replacing it with her own style. The sight filled Simone with a cold fury that surprised her with its intensity. As she watched, Rebecca came out of the house, dressed in expensive clothes that she had probably charged to Alexander's account. She got into her car and drove away, probably heading to another spa appointment or shopping trip. Simone waited until Rebecca was out of sight, then drove to the end of the block and called Patricia. I need you to do something else for me, she said. What? I need you to find out everything you can about the gala next Saturday. Who's going, what the schedule is, when the speeches happen. I can do that. But Simone, are you really sure about confronting them publicly? I'm not going to confront them. I'm going to expose them. There's a difference. What kind of difference? Confrontation is emotional. Exposure is strategic. I'm not going to yell at them or make a scene. I'm going to present facts calmly and clearly, and let the facts speak for themselves. And if Alexander tries to have you removed, then everyone will see exactly how desperate he is to keep the truth from coming out. That evening, Simone met with her attorney, Margaret Jonas, to discuss the legal implications of what she was planning. From a legal standpoint, what you're proposing is risky, Margaret said. But given the evidence we have of fraud and theft, I think we can justify it as a necessary step to protect your interests. What about the evidence we've gathered? Will it hold up in court? Most of it, yes. The financial records are solid, the photographs are clear, and the witness statements are credible. But Simone, are you sure you want to do this publicly? We could achieve the same result through legal channels. Legal channels take time. And time is something I don't have. Rebecca is planning to disappear, and if she does, we'll never see justice. What if this backfires? What if Alexander and Rebecca manage to spin this in their favor? They won't. Because everything I'm going to say will be true, and I'll have documentation to prove it. And if they sue you for defamation? Let them try. Truth is a defense against defamation. And I have nothing but truth on my side. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Okay. But we need to be very careful about how we do this. Every word you say needs to be factual and supportable. It will be. I've been planning this for weeks. The next few days passed quickly as Simone finalized her preparations. Patricia contacted Daniel Morrison, who agreed to meet with her after she explained that she was investigating Rebecca on behalf of a potential victim. She's a predator, Daniel told Patricia during their meeting. She targets successful men, gains their trust, then systematically destroys their lives. She did it to me, she did it to her first husband, and she's doing it to this Alexander guy now. Why didn't you warn Alexander? How could I? Call him up and say, hey, your girlfriend is a sociopath who's going to steal all your money? He wouldn't have believed me. Just like I didn't believe it when someone tried to warn me about her. Someone tried to warn you? Her first husband's brother. He called me about 6 months into my relationship with Rebecca, told me what she had done to his brother. I thought he was just bitter about the divorce. But he was telling the truth. Every word. Rebecca is methodical, patient, and completely ruthless. She makes you fall in love with her, then she takes everything you have. Is she planning to do the same thing to Alexander? From what she's told me, yes. But she's also planning something else. What? She's planning to disappear. She's been asking me about places where someone could start over, places where it would be hard to track someone down. When? Soon. Maybe this weekend. She's gotten spooked by Alexander's suspicions, and she wants to cut her losses and run. This information changed everything. If Rebecca was planning to disappear this weekend, then Simone's plan to expose them at the gala might be too late. But as she thought about it, Simone realized that Rebecca's timeline might actually work in her favor. If Rebecca was planning to run, then she would be desperate, careless, more likely to make mistakes. And desperate people often revealed their true nature when they were cornered. Simone made a decision. She wouldn't wait for the gala. She would force a confrontation sooner, on her own terms, in a setting where she had the advantage. She was going to go home. On Friday evening, Simone drove to her former house. Both Alexander's and Rebecca's cars were in the driveway, and she could see lights on in the kitchen. They were home, probably having dinner, probably planning their next move. Simone parked across the street and sat in her car for a moment, gathering her courage. She had been planning this moment for weeks, but now that it was here, she felt nervous. Not nervous about confronting them. Nervous about what she might discover about herself when she did. She got out of her car, walked across the street, and rang the doorbell of the house that had been her home for 5 years. It was time to end this. The door opened and Rebecca stood there, wearing one of Simone's old aprons over an expensive dress that Simone didn't recognize. For a moment, both women stared at each other in silence. Then Rebecca's face transformed from surprise to cold hostility. "What are you doing here?" Rebecca demanded. "I live here," Simone said calmly. "Or rather, I did. Until my husband decided to file for divorce without warning and move his girlfriend into our home. You don't live here anymore. Alexander asked you to leave. Actually, Alexander asked me to give him space. I chose to leave temporarily. But this is still legally my home until the divorce is finalized. Rebecca's hand tightened on the door handle. You can't just show up here unannounced. Can't I? This is my house, Rebecca. My name is still on the deed, my belongings are still inside, and my husband apparently still lives here with his mistress. I'm not his mistress. We're engaged. Engaged? Simone raised an eyebrow. Congratulations. When did he propose? Before or after he filed for divorce from his current wife? Before Rebecca could answer, Alexander appeared behind her. He looked terrible, tired, stressed, and older than Simone remembered. His hair was disheveled, his shirt was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Simone, he said, his voice carefully neutral. What are you doing here? I came to talk to you. To both of you, actually. This isn't a good time. I'm sure it isn't. But we need to talk. We can talk through our lawyers. We could. But I think you'd prefer to handle this privately. Unless you want your colleagues at the firm to know about your situation. Alexander's face went pale. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that you've been planning this divorce for months. I'm talking about the money you've been moving out of our joint accounts. I'm talking about the timeline you wrote out, planning to destroy my financial independence before filing for divorce. I don't know what you think you know, but I know everything, Alexander. I know about the secret bank account with $127,000 in it. I know about your meetings with divorce attorneys. I know about the timeline that had you married to Rebecca by next summer. Alexander stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Behind him, Rebecca had gone very still. May I come in? Simone asked politely. I think this conversation would be better had in private. Alexander stepped aside reluctantly, and Simone walked into her former home. The living room looked different. Rebecca had rearranged the furniture and added decorative touches that were completely at odds with Simone's taste. But it was still recognizably the space she had loved, the space where she had built a life with the man who was now staring at her with undisguised hostility. How did you? Alexander started, then stopped. How did I find out? I'm a marketing executive, Alexander. My job is to understand people, to predict their behavior, to uncover their motivations. Did you really think I wouldn't notice that my husband was acting strange? You lost your job, Rebecca interjected. You're not a marketing executive anymore. Simone turned to look at Rebecca with mild amusement. Actually, I never lost my job. That was a test. A test that my husband failed spectacularly. What? Alexander stared at her. What do you mean you never lost your job? I mean, I made up the whole story about being fired. I wanted to see how you would react, whether you would support me or whether you would see it as an opportunity. You lied to me? I lied to you. Just like you've been lying to me for months. Alexander sank into a chair, his face gray. You've been lying this whole time? Not lying. Testing. And you failed every single test, Alexander. When I told you I lost my job, you were relieved. When I said I might never work again, you were excited. When I suggested we start a family, you practically jumped at the chance to get me pregnant and financially dependent. That's not. I was trying to be supportive. You were trying to control me. You wanted me unemployed, pregnant, and completely dependent on you so that when you divorced me, I'd be in the weakest possible position. Rebecca had been listening to this exchange with growing alarm. Now she stepped forward, her face twisted with anger. You manipulative bitch, she spat. You've been playing games this whole time. I've been protecting myself, Simone replied calmly. Just like you've been playing games with my husband. I love Alexander. We love each other. Do you? Or do you love his money and his status and the lifestyle he can provide? That's not true. Isn't it? Tell me, Rebecca, how much money have you spent on Alexander's credit cards in the past month? Rebecca's face flushed. I don't see how that's any of your business. It became my business when you started stealing from my husband. Oh, excuse me, when you started sharing his finances without his explicit permission. Alexander said I could use the account. Alexander said you could use the joint account you set up together. He didn't say you could forge his signature on checks from his personal account. Rebecca went very still. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Because I have photographs of the checks, Rebecca. I have bank records showing the deposits. I have security camera footage of you at the bank. You've been spying on us? I've been gathering evidence. Just like you've been gathering information about Alexander's finances since the day you met him. Simone turned to Alexander, who was staring at Rebecca with dawning comprehension. Did you know, Alexander, that Rebecca has been married twice before? Did you know that both of her previous husbands lost substantial amounts of money in their divorces? What? Alexander looked between Simone and Rebecca. Rebecca, you told me you'd only been married once. Rebecca looked trapped. It was complicated. Complicated how? Her first husband, Michael Jonas, lost his medical practice after Rebecca took him for half of everything he owned. He committed suicide 6 months after their divorce was finalized. That's not. Rebecca started. Her second husband, Daniel Morrison, lost his real estate business and his home. Rebecca convinced him to put her name on all his accounts, then cleaned them out during the divorce proceedings. Alexander was staring at Rebecca with horror. Is this true? Alexander, let me explain. Is it true? It's more complicated than she's making it sound. It's very simple actually, Simone said. Rebecca targets successful men, gains their trust, gets access to their finances, then takes them for everything they're worth. She's a professional con artist and you're her latest mark. That's not true. Rebecca's composure was cracking. I love Alexander. We're going to be married. Are you? Because according to my sources, you've been planning to disappear with his money. You've been asking your ex-husband Daniel about places to start over, places where it would be hard to track someone down. Alexander stood up slowly, his face a mask of betrayal and rage. You've been planning to leave me? No, Alexander, I would never. You've been meeting with Daniel Morrison. I saw the credit card charges for the restaurants where you met him. I can explain that. Can you? Can you explain why you've been stealing money from my personal account? Can you explain why you lied about your previous marriages? Can you explain why you've been asking my colleagues about my finances? Rebecca looked around the room like a trapped animal. Alexander, you have to listen to me. She's trying to turn you against me. She's jealous because you chose me over her. I chose you. Alexander laughed bitterly. I thought I chose you. But apparently I was just the latest victim in your ongoing con game. That's not true. Isn't it? How long have you been planning this, Rebecca? How long have you been setting me up? Rebecca's face crumpled and she started to cry. Alexander, please. I love you. I know it started as, I know I made mistakes. But I do love you now. You love me now. So you admit it didn't start with love? I was in a bad place financially. I needed security. But then I got to know you and I fell in love with you for real. After you had already started stealing from me. I never stole from you. I borrowed money, yes, but I was going to pay it back after we got married. With what money? You don't have any money. You've never had any money. You live off whatever you can take from the men you manipulate. Simone watched this exchange with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Alexander was finally seeing Rebecca for who she really was, but it was painful to watch him realize how completely he had been played. Alexander, Simone said gently, there's more you need to know. More? Rebecca has been working with Daniel Morrison to maximize what she can take from you. They've been planning your financial destruction together. That's not true. Rebecca protested. I have photographs of your meetings with Daniel. I have witness statements about your conversations. I know about the apartments you've been looking at in other cities. Alexander sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. My God. What have I done? You fell in love with the wrong person, Simone said. It happens. I destroyed our marriage for a woman who was planning to rob me blind. Yes, you did. Simone, Alexander looked up at her, his eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything. The damage is done. Can you forgive me? Can we try to work this out? Simone looked at her husband, her soon-to-be ex-husband, and felt nothing but pity. No, Alexander. We can't work this out. But if Rebecca was manipulating me, if I was being conned, you still chose to betray me. You still chose to plan my destruction. You still chose to move another woman into our home and our bed while we were still married. I made a mistake. You made a series of calculated decisions designed to destroy my life and steal my money. That's not a mistake. That's a betrayal. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? Now you deal with the consequences of your choices. Both of you. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people you are. I'm going to make sure your colleagues know about your affair, your fraud, your theft. I'm going to make sure Rebecca's con game is exposed to everyone who might be her next victim. Simone, please? Please what? Please let you get away with it? Please pretend this never happened. Please don't destroy my career over this. You should have thought about your career before you decided to destroy my life. Rebecca, who had been silent during this exchange, suddenly spoke up. You can't prove any of this. Can't I? Simone pulled out her phone and showed them a folder full of photographs, documents, and recordings. I can prove all of it. Bank statements showing the money transfers. Photos of you together during times when Alexander told me he was working late. Security footage of you forging signatures. Witness statements from people who know about your previous cons. Rebecca stared at the phone screen, her face growing paler with each image. You've been watching us this whole time? I've been protecting myself. Which is more than I can say for either of you. What do you want? Alexander asked quietly. Money? A better divorce settlement. I want justice. I want consequences. I want to make sure you never do this to anyone else. And how exactly do you plan to do that? Simone smiled coldly. By telling the truth. All of it. To everyone who needs to hear it. Rebecca suddenly bolted for the door, but Simone had been expecting this. I wouldn't run if I were you, Rebecca. The police are already aware of the situation. Running will only make things worse. The police? Alexander stood up quickly. You called the police? I reported the financial fraud, yes. Forging someone's signature on checks is a felony. Stealing money from joint accounts under false pretenses is also a crime. I didn't steal anything. Rebecca protested. Alexander gave me permission to use those accounts. Did he give you permission to forge his signature? Did he give you permission to transfer money to accounts he didn't know about? Rebecca was quiet. The evidence speaks for itself, Simone continued. And the pattern with your previous husbands establishes intent. You're going to have a hard time convincing anyone that this was just a misunderstanding. Alexander sat down heavily. What's going to happen to us? That depends on what you do next. If you cooperate, if you make restitution for the money that was stolen, if you accept responsibility for your actions, things might go easier for you. And if we don't? Then I release everything to the press, to your employer, to the State Bar Association, and to anyone else who might be interested in your story. You're blackmailing us. I'm giving you a choice. Face the consequences of your actions with some dignity, or have them exposed publicly with none. Alexander looked at Rebecca, who was sitting on the couch with her head in her hands. Rebecca, what do you want to do? Rebecca looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. I want to run. I want to get as far away from here as possible. That's not an option anymore, Simone said. The authorities know about the financial crimes. Running will just make you a fugitive. Then what do you suggest we do? I suggest you hire very good lawyers and prepare to pay for what you've done. Over the next hour, Simone laid out everything she knew and everything she could prove. The evidence was overwhelming: months of financial fraud, documented lies, witness statements, photographic evidence of their affair, and testimony from Rebecca's previous victims. Alexander listened in stunned silence as the full scope of his situation became clear. He was facing potential criminal charges for financial fraud, civil liability for the money that had been stolen, professional sanctions from the Bar Association, and the complete destruction of his reputation. Rebecca was facing even worse consequences. With her history of similar crimes, she could be looking at serious prison time. There is one way this could go easier for both of you, Simone said finally. What way? Alexander asked. Full cooperation. Full restitution. And full disclosure about any other victims. Other victims? I have reason to believe Rebecca may have been running similar cons on other men while she was with you. If you help identify them, if you help them recover their losses, it might count in your favor when this goes to court. Rebecca looked up sharply. There are no other men. Are you sure about that? Because the surveillance footage shows you meeting with several different men over the past few months. Men who weren't Daniel Morrison and weren't Alexander. Rebecca's face went white. Those were just friends. Friends who took you shopping and paid for expensive dinners? Friends who you met at hotels? You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. You're not just a con artist, Rebecca. You're a serial con artist. And you've been running multiple cons simultaneously. Alexander stared at Rebecca in horror. You've been seeing other men? Not romantically. They were just business relationships. Business relationships? What kind of business? Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a small voice, she said, I was getting money from them. Small amounts. They thought they were helping me through a rough financial patch. You were conning multiple men at the same time? It wasn't like that. I wasn't hurting anyone. I was just borrowing money. Borrowing money under false pretenses from men you had no intention of paying back. I would have paid them back. With what money? You never had any intention of paying anyone back. You were planning to disappear with whatever you could steal from all of them. Alexander stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the street. How many men? I don't know exactly, Simone said. But based on the surveillance, at least 3 others besides Alexander. My God. Alexander turned back to Rebecca. You were running 5 different cons at the same time? It wasn't cons. It was just, I needed money to survive while I was building a relationship with you. You needed money to survive, so you stole it from innocent people. I didn't steal anything. You took money under false pretenses with no intention of returning it. That's theft. Rebecca started crying again, but this time her tears looked calculated rather than genuine. Alexander, you have to understand. I was desperate. I didn't have any other choice. You had choices. You could have gotten a job. You could have lived within your means. You could have been honest about your situation. You wouldn't have been interested in me if you knew I was broke. You're right. I wouldn't have been. Because I'm not interested in being used. The conversation continued for another hour, with Simone methodically laying out the evidence and the consequences they were facing. By the end, both Alexander and Rebecca understood that their lives as they knew them were over. Alexander would lose his partnership at the law firm, face potential criminal charges, and have his reputation destroyed. Rebecca would likely go to prison and would never again be able to run her cons successfully. What happens to us now? Alexander asked as Simone prepared to leave. Now you face the consequences of your choices. Both of you. And you? What happens to you? I go back to my life. The life I built, the career I earned, the future I planned for myself. Without me. Without you. Alexander looked like he wanted to say something else, but Simone held up a hand to stop him. Alexander, there's nothing you can say that will change what you did. You chose to betray me, to steal from me, to plan my destruction. You chose Rebecca over our marriage, money over love, deception over honesty. Those were your choices, and now you have to live with them. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix what you broke. As Simone walked to the door, Rebecca called out to her. What about forgiveness? What about second chances? Simone turned back to look at her. You had your second chance, Rebecca. And your third chance. And your fourth chance. You used them all up on your previous victims. I could change. People can change. Some people can change. But some people are exactly who they choose to be. And you've chosen to be a thief and a liar and a manipulator. Those are your choices. You're destroying our lives. No, Rebecca. You destroyed your own lives. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it. As Simone walked out of her former home for the last time, she felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. She had won Alexander, and Rebecca would face consequences for their actions. Justice would be served, and she would emerge from this stronger than before. But she had also lost something. Not just her marriage, but her faith in the man she had loved for 10 years. That loss would take time to heal. Still, as she drove away from the house where she had once been happy, Simone felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Hope for the future, hope for new possibilities, hope for a life free from people who saw her as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. The next chapter of her life was about to begin. 3 weeks after the confrontation at her former home, Simone sat in her new apartment across town, reading the morning newspaper. The headline on the business section made her smile grimly. Prominent attorney faces fraud charges in divorce scandal. The article detailed Alexander's fall from grace with the kind of thorough reporting that only happened when a story had everything. Money, betrayal, crime, and a con artist with a history of destroying lives. The journalist had clearly done his homework, uncovering not only Alexander and Rebecca's recent crimes but also Rebecca's pattern of targeting and destroying successful men. Simone's phone rang. It was Patricia. Have you seen the morning news? Patricia asked. I'm reading it now. Very thorough reporting. The reporter called me yesterday. I gave him everything we had on Rebecca's previous victims. Turns out there were 2 more men we didn't know about. 2 more. A dentist in Portland and a tech executive in San Francisco. She was running long-distance cons on them while she was setting up Alexander. The total amount she stole from all her victims is close to $500,000. Simone felt a chill. $500,000? She's been very busy. And very successful until now. What's happening with the criminal charges? Rebecca was arrested yesterday morning. Alexander turned himself in this afternoon. They're both being held pending bail hearings. And Alexander's law firm? Suspended him immediately. They're conducting their own investigation to see if any client funds were involved. Were they? Not directly. But Alexander had been using firm resources to research you and Rebecca, and he had been having personal meetings during work hours. The partners aren't happy. Simone set down the newspaper and walked to her window. Her new apartment was smaller than the house she had shared with Alexander, but it was hers. She had furnished it with new things that had no connection to her old life. It felt like a fresh start. There's something else, Patricia said. Rebecca wants to see you. What? She called my office yesterday. She wants to meet with you. Why would I want to meet with her? She says she has information about Alexander that you need to know. Something about the money he stole from you. What kind of information? She wouldn't say over the phone. But she seemed desperate. Simone thought about this. She's probably trying to make some kind of deal. Trying to minimize her own culpability by blaming everything on Alexander. That's what I thought too. But what if she really does have information you need? Like what? Like where the rest of your money is? Remember, we only found $127,000 in Alexander's secret account. But based on the transfers from your joint accounts, there should be more. You think there's more money hidden somewhere? I think Alexander is smarter than we gave him credit for. And I think Rebecca might know where he hid it. Simone was quiet for a moment. Where does she want to meet? The county jail. She's being held without bail because of her flight risk. When? Whenever you're ready. Simone looked around her new apartment at the life she was rebuilding. Did she really want to get pulled back into the drama with Alexander and Rebecca? Did she really want to subject herself to whatever manipulation Rebecca was planning? But if there was more money, if Alexander had hidden assets that she was entitled to, she needed to know about it. Set it up, she said finally. But I want you there with me. Of course. 2 days later, Simone found herself sitting across from Rebecca Martinez in a small conference room at the county jail. Rebecca looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her orange jumpsuit was too big for her small frame, and there were dark circles under her eyes. But her eyes were still sharp, still calculating. Even in jail, facing serious criminal charges, Rebecca was still looking for an angle. Thank you for coming, Rebecca said when Simone and Patricia entered the room. What do you want, Rebecca? I want to make a deal. What kind of deal? I'll tell you everything I know about what Alexander did with your money, and in exchange you ask the prosecutor to consider leniency in my sentencing. Why would I do that? Because there's a lot more money than you know about. And because Alexander played you just as much as I did. Simone sat back in her chair. I'm listening. Alexander didn't just move money out of your joint accounts. He's been stealing from you for over a year. What do you mean? Your retirement account. He's been taking money out of it and hiding it in offshore accounts. Simone felt her blood run cold. That's impossible. He doesn't have access to my retirement account. He does if he forged your signature on the paperwork. You're lying. Am I? When was the last time you checked your retirement balance? Simone thought about this. She received quarterly statements, but she rarely looked at them closely. Her retirement account was supposed to be managed automatically, with regular contributions from her salary and steady growth over time. How much money are we talking about? About $200,000. Taken out over the past 18 months in small increments. That's impossible. I would have noticed. Would you? Alexander made sure the statements still showed the correct balance. He had someone at the investment firm helping him doctor the paperwork. Someone at the firm? His college roommate, James Morrison. He works in the back office at Sterling Investments. Patricia was taking notes rapidly. Morrison. Any relation to Daniel Morrison? Daniel's younger brother. That's how I knew about the retirement account theft. Daniel told me about it when we were discussing the situation. So this was a family business, Simone said. The Morrison brothers helping you and Alexander steal from me? I didn't know about the retirement account until after I was already involved with Alexander. By then it was too late to back out. It's never too late to back out of a crime, Rebecca. You don't understand. Daniel had information about my previous relationships. He was blackmailing me. Blackmailing you how? He knew about things I had done that could have sent me to prison. He said if I didn't help him get revenge on Alexander, he would turn me in. Simone stared at Rebecca. Revenge on Alexander? Why does Daniel want revenge on Alexander? Because Alexander was the attorney who represented Daniel's ex-wife in their divorce. Alexander is the one who helped me take Daniel for everything he was worth. The pieces were falling into place. Daniel Morrison hadn't been helping Rebecca con Alexander. He had been using Rebecca to con Alexander in revenge for what Alexander had done to him years earlier. So this whole thing was Daniel's plan? Not the whole thing. I really was targeting Alexander on my own. But when Daniel found out about it, he blackmailed me into helping him make it worse. How much worse? The retirement account theft was his idea. The plan to get me pregnant and then disappear was his idea. The plan to destroy your reputation by claiming you were mentally unstable was his idea. You were planning to get pregnant? Daniel said it would complicate the divorce and give me more leverage. But I never actually. I was taking birth control the whole time. Simone felt sick. The level of planning, the depth of betrayal, the number of people involved in destroying her life was overwhelming. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm facing 20 years in prison and Daniel is walking around free. He used me just like he used you and Alexander. I want him to pay for what he did. And in exchange? In exchange, I'll testify against Daniel and James Morrison. I'll help you recover all the money that was stolen. And I'll plead guilty to my own crimes without fighting the charges. Simone looked at Patricia, who was still taking notes. What do you think? I think we need to verify everything she's saying. But if it's true, if there really is $200,000 missing from your retirement account, that's a much bigger crime than what we knew about. And if I help her get a reduced sentence? You're not helping her. You're helping yourself recover your money and making sure all the guilty parties are punished. Simone looked back at Rebecca. If I agree to this, if I ask the prosecutor to consider your cooperation, I want to know everything. Not just about the money but about everything you and Daniel and Alexander planned. I'll tell you everything. And I want to know about your other victims. All of them. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. There were 7 men total over the past 5 years. I took about $600,000 altogether. $600,000? Daniel was my partner in most of it. We would identify targets, I would seduce them, and Daniel would help me access their finances. We split everything 50-50. Until Alexander. Daniel wanted to take Alexander for everything because of what Alexander had done to him. But I started to have feelings for Alexander and I wanted out of the partnership with Daniel. So you decided to double-cross Daniel? I decided to try to build a real relationship with Alexander and leave the con game behind. But Daniel wouldn't let you. Daniel said if I tried to go legitimate with Alexander, he would expose everything. He would tell Alexander about my past, tell the police about the other victims, and make sure I went to prison. So you went along with his plan. I went along with his plan. Until I realized that Daniel was planning to frame me for everything once it was over. Frame you how? He was going to claim that I had manipulated him into helping me, that he was another one of my victims. He had been documenting everything, making it look like I was the mastermind and he was just another man I had seduced and used. Simone felt a grudging respect for Rebecca's intelligence. Even trapped in jail facing serious charges, she was still thinking strategically. So now you want to turn the tables on Daniel. I want to tell the truth. Daniel Morrison is the real criminal mastermind here. I'm just another one of his victims. Are you though? Or are you just saying that because it's convenient? Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. I don't know anymore. I've been lying for so long, I'm not sure I remember what the truth is. It was the most honest thing Rebecca had said since Simone had met her. I'll consider your offer, Simone said finally. But I need to verify everything you've told me first. How long will that take? As long as it takes. And Rebecca? Yes. If you're lying to me about any of this, if you're trying to manipulate me one more time, I will make sure you serve every single day of the maximum sentence. I understand. I hope you do. As Simone and Patricia left the jail, Simone felt emotionally exhausted. Every time she thought she understood the full scope of what had been done to her, she discovered new layers of betrayal and manipulation. Do you believe her? Patricia asked as they drove away. I believe part of it. The part about Daniel Morrison makes sense. It explains why Alexander moved so quickly, why the planning was so sophisticated. And the part about the retirement account? We'll check on that immediately. If Rebecca is telling the truth about that, then this is a much bigger crime than we thought. And if she's lying? Then she's even more manipulative than I gave her credit for. That afternoon, Simone called her investment advisor at Sterling Investments. It took 3 phone calls and 2 hours of hold time, but she finally got through to someone who could access her account details. "Miss Carter," the advisor said when he came back on the line. "I'm seeing some irregularities in your account that I think you should know about." Simone's heart sank. "What kind of irregularities?" "There have been several withdrawals over the past 18 months that weren't authorized through our normal procedures. The paperwork shows your signature, but the requests came through a third party." "What third party?" "A James Morrison in our back office. He processed the withdrawal requests and handled the paperwork." "How much money was withdrawn?" $187,000 over 18 months. Simone closed her eyes. Rebecca had been telling the truth. Where did the money go? "According to the records, it was transferred to a joint account belonging to you and your husband. But Miss Carter, I have to tell you, this doesn't look right to me." "It's not right. The money was stolen." "Then we need to involve our fraud department immediately." "Yes, we do." As Simone hung up the phone, she realized that her nightmare was far from over. Alexander hadn't just betrayed her with another woman. He had been systematically stealing from her for over a year, with help from an organized criminal network that had been targeting successful people and destroying their lives. But she also realized something else. She was stronger now than she had been 6 months ago. She had survived the initial betrayal, uncovered the truth, and fought back successfully. Whatever came next, she would be ready for it. The war wasn't over. But she was winning. 6 months later, Simone stood in the conference room of her attorney's office, watching as the final documents were signed. Alexander sat across the table from her, looking older and defeated. His once expensive suit was wrinkled, his face was gaunt, and his hands shook slightly as he signed his name. "That's the last of it," Margaret Jonas said, gathering the papers. "The divorce is final, all the stolen money has been recovered and returned, and the criminal restitution has been paid." Simone nodded, feeling surprisingly empty. She had expected to feel triumph in this moment, satisfaction at seeing justice served. Instead, she felt tired and ready to move forward. "What happens to Alexander now?" she asked Margaret quietly. "He'll serve 18 months in minimum security prison for the financial fraud. After that, he'll be on probation for 3 years. His law license has been permanently revoked." "And Rebecca?" 5 years in state prison. She'll be eligible for parole in 3 years if she maintains good behavior." "And Daniel Morrison?" 7 years in federal prison for running a criminal enterprise. His brother James got 2 years for his part in the investment fraud. Simone looked across the table at Alexander, who was staring down at his hands. In another life, in another world, this man had been her husband. She had loved him, trusted him, built dreams with him. Now he was just a stranger who had tried to destroy her life. "Alexander," she said quietly. He looked up at her, his eyes filled with shame and regret. "Yes. I hope you learn something from this. I hope you become a better person." "I will. I promise I will." "Don't promise me anything. Promise yourself." Alexander nodded, then stood up and walked out of the conference room without another word. Simone watched him go, feeling the final chapter of their relationship close forever. "How are you feeling?" Margaret asked when they were alone. "Relieved. Ready to move on. You should be proud of yourself. What you did took incredible courage and intelligence." "I just protected myself. Anyone would have done the same thing." "No, they wouldn't have. Most people would have been destroyed by what Alexander and Rebecca did to you. You fought back and won." Simone gathered her purse and coat. "I didn't win, Margaret. I survived. Sometimes surviving is winning." Outside the attorney's office, Simone found Patricia waiting for her. "All done?" Patricia asked. "All done. How does it feel?" "Like the end of a very long, very difficult chapter." They walked to Patricia's car in comfortable silence. Over the past year, Patricia had become more than just a private investigator. She had become a friend, someone who understood what Simone had been through and had helped her fight back. "Do you want to get lunch?" Patricia asked. "Celebrate?" "Actually, I have somewhere I need to be." "Oh. I have a job interview." Patricia smiled. "Really? Where?" "Morrison Marketing Group. They're a small firm, but they're growing fast. They want someone with my experience to head up their new corporate accounts division." "That's wonderful. Are you excited?" "I'm nervous. It's been a year since I've really worked. I'm worried I might have lost my edge." "Are you kidding? After what you've been through, after the strategic thinking you've demonstrated, you're probably sharper than you've ever been." "Maybe. Definitely. You're going to be great." The job interview went better than Simone had hoped. Morrison Marketing Group was a dynamic, growing company that specialized in helping small businesses develop their brand identity and reach new customers. The work was challenging and creative, exactly the kind of environment where Simone thrived. The company's founder, Elena Morrison, was an energetic woman in her 40s who had built the business from nothing over the past 10 years. "I've been following your story," Elena said during the interview. "What happened to you was terrible, but the way you handled it was impressive." "Thank you. I mean it." The strategic thinking, the patience, the careful gathering of evidence, those are exactly the skills we need for managing complex client relationships. "I'm glad you see it that way. Some people might see it as vindictive. Some people would be wrong. You protected yourself and made sure justice was served. That takes strength and intelligence." "I hope so. I know so. The job is yours if you want it." Simone felt a surge of relief and excitement. "I want it." "Good. You start Monday." That evening, Simone called her sister Lauren to share the good news. "I'm so proud of you," Lauren said. "You've been through hell and you've come out stronger." "I don't feel stronger. I feel different." "Different how?" "More careful. More aware of people's motivations. Less trusting." "That's not necessarily a bad thing." "No, I suppose it isn't. Are you dating anyone yet?" "No. I'm not ready for that." "When do you think you will be?" "I don't know. Maybe never. Maybe someday. Right now I'm focused on rebuilding my career and my life." "That's healthy." "I hope so." 6 months into her new job, Simone had settled into a routine that felt comfortable and sustainable. She woke up early, went to the gym, worked long but fulfilling days, and spent her evenings reading, cooking, or having dinner with friends. Her life was quiet but rich, simple but satisfying. She had moved into a larger apartment in a neighborhood she loved, furnished it with things that made her happy, and created a space that was entirely her own. She had made new friends, reconnected with old ones, and built a social life that didn't revolve around being someone's wife. Most importantly, she had learned to be alone without being lonely. One evening in late spring, she was having dinner at a small restaurant near her apartment when she noticed a man at the next table struggling with his laptop while trying to eat. He looked frustrated and overwhelmed. "Excuse me," she said politely. "I don't mean to intrude, but are you having computer trouble?" He looked up at her with tired eyes. "Yes, actually. I'm trying to finish a presentation for tomorrow morning, but this thing keeps freezing on me. I might be able to help. I work in marketing, so I deal with presentation software all the time. Would you mind? I'm at my wit's end here." Simone moved to his table and spent the next 20 minutes helping him fix his presentation. The man, whose name was Marcus, was a social worker who was trying to secure funding for a new youth program. "This is amazing," he said when they finished. "You've saved my life." "It's no problem. The cause sounds important." "It is. We're trying to help kids who have aged out of foster care. Give them job training and life skills so they don't end up homeless." "That's wonderful work." "It's challenging work, but rewarding." They talked for another hour, and Simone found herself enjoying Marcus's company. He was intelligent, passionate about his work, and had a gentle sense of humor that made her laugh. When he asked if she would like to have coffee sometime, she surprised herself by saying yes. "I should warn you," she said as they exchanged phone numbers. "I'm not looking for anything serious. I'm just starting to rebuild my life after a difficult divorce." "I understand. I'm not looking for anything serious either. I'm just interested in getting to know you better." "Okay. Coffee sounds nice." Their first coffee date led to a second, then a third. Marcus was patient and understanding about Simone's reluctance to get deeply involved. He had been through his own difficult relationship experiences and understood the need to take things slowly. Over the following months, they developed a friendship that gradually deepened into something more. Marcus never pushed for more than Simone was ready to give, never made her feel pressured or rushed. He respected her independence and admired her strength. "You're remarkable," he told her one evening as they walked through the park near her apartment. "The way you've rebuilt your life, the way you've moved forward from what happened to you." "I'm not remarkable. I'm just stubborn." "You're both." "Maybe. Definitely." A year after meeting Marcus, Simone felt ready to take their relationship to the next level. She invited him to move in with her, and for the first time since her divorce, she began to think about the possibility of building a future with someone. But this time was different. This time she approached the relationship with her eyes wide open. She and Marcus talked openly about their finances, their goals, their expectations. They made decisions together as equals with mutual respect and trust. "I want you to know," Marcus said one evening as they were making dinner together, That I love you for who you are, not for what you can give me. I know that. Good. Because I never want you to doubt my motives. I don't. You've shown me who you are through your actions, not just your words. And you've shown me what it means to be with a truly strong, independent woman. We're good together. We are. 2 years after her divorce was finalized, Simone received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Rebecca, who was still in prison but would be eligible for parole soon. Dear Simone, the letter read, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I've been thinking about what I did to you and I'm truly sorry. I know that doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it. I've been going to therapy in prison trying to understand why I made the choices I made. I'm not making excuses, but I think I was so afraid of being poor and powerless that I convinced myself that taking from others was justified. I know I hurt you badly and I know I can never undo that damage. But I want you to know that what happened taught me something important about myself, and I'm trying to become a better person. I don't expect forgiveness and I'm not asking for anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that I hope you found happiness. Sincerely, Rebecca Martinez. Simone read the letter twice, then put it in a drawer. She wasn't ready to forgive Rebecca, and she might never be. But she was glad to know that Rebecca was taking responsibility for her actions and trying to change. That evening she told Marcus about the letter. How does it make you feel? He asked. Sad mostly. Sad for who Rebecca could have been if she had made different choices. And angry? Less angry than I expected. The anger has faded over time. That's healthy. I think so too. Do you think you'll ever respond to the letter? Maybe someday. When I'm ready. There's no rush. No, there isn't. On a warm Saturday morning in June, 3 years after her divorce, Simone was promoted to Vice President of Client Relations at Morrison Marketing Group. The promotion came with a significant salary increase, a corner office, and the respect of her colleagues. Elena Morrison made the announcement at the company's monthly all-hands meeting. Simone has been instrumental in our growth over the past 2 years, Elena said. Her strategic thinking, her client management skills, and her leadership have made her invaluable to our team. After the meeting, Simone's colleagues congratulated her with genuine warmth and respect. She had built real relationships with these people, relationships based on mutual professional respect rather than personal manipulation. I'm proud of you, Marcus said when she called to tell him the news. Thank you. I'm proud of myself too. You should be. You've built an amazing career. We should celebrate tonight. I already made reservations at your favorite restaurant. How did you know I'd get the promotion? Because I know how good you are at what you do. That evening, as they celebrated over dinner, Marcus surprised her with a small velvet box. Simone, he said, getting down on one knee beside their table. I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. You're my best friend, my partner, and the strongest person I know. Will you marry me? Simone looked down at the man who had been patient with her healing, who had respected her independence, who had shown her what real love looked like. The ring was beautiful but simple, exactly what she would have chosen for herself. Yes, she said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I'll marry you. The restaurant erupted in applause as Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger. But Simone barely heard the noise around them. She was thinking about how far she had come, how much she had survived, how much stronger she was now than she had been 4 years ago. As Marcus stood up and kissed her, Simone felt something she hadn't felt in years, complete happiness. Not the naive happiness of her first marriage, but the deep, grounded happiness of someone who had been tested and had emerged victorious. I love you, she whispered against his lips. I love you too. Forever. Forever. 6 months later, Simone and Marcus were married in a small ceremony in the garden behind her apartment building. Lauren was her maid of honor, Patricia was one of her bridesmaids, and Elena Morrison gave a toast about the power of resilience and the importance of choosing partners who saw you as an equal. Simone wore a simple white dress that she had chosen herself, carried flowers that she loved, and made vows that she had written from her heart. Everything about the wedding was authentic and real, a reflection of who she had become rather than who others expected her to be. As she and Marcus danced their first dance as husband and wife, Simone thought about Alexander. She wondered if he was watching the news coverage of her wedding, if he realized what he had lost when he chose to betray her. She wondered if he understood that his actions had ultimately made her stronger, wiser, and more capable of recognizing real love when she found it. But mostly she didn't think about Alexander at all. He was part of her past, a chapter that had ended. Marcus was her present and her future, a man who saw her strength as something to admire rather than something to diminish. Are you happy? Marcus asked as they swayed to the music. Happier than I ever thought possible. Good. Because you deserve all the happiness in the world. We both do. Yes, we do. As the song ended and their guests applauded, Simone looked around at the faces of the people who loved and supported her. These were relationships she had built through honesty and authenticity, relationships that would last because they were based on mutual respect and genuine affection. She had lost everything once, but she had rebuilt her life into something better than it had been before. She had learned that she was stronger than she knew, smarter than she had given herself credit for, and capable of fighting for herself when necessary. Most importantly, she had learned that some betrayals, as painful as they were, could ultimately become gifts. Alexander's betrayal had freed her from a marriage that wasn't built on real love and had led her to a life that was authentically her own. 5 years after her first marriage ended, Simone Carter Williams stood in her corner office, looking out at the city skyline. Her company had just landed its biggest client ever, a Fortune 500 corporation that wanted Morrison Marketing Group to handle their entire brand identity overhaul. The success felt good, but what felt better was knowing that she had earned it through her own intelligence, hard work, and integrity. No one could take this away from her because she had built it herself. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Congratulations on the new client. I'm proud of you. Can't wait to celebrate tonight. Simone smiled and typed back, thank you. I love you. I love you too. See you at home. Home. The word still gave her a warm feeling. She and Marcus had bought a house together the previous year, a place that was theirs from the beginning with no complicated history or painful memories. As she packed up her briefcase to head home to her husband, Simone reflected on how much her life had changed. 4 years ago, she had been a woman whose husband was planning to destroy her life while she slept beside him, trusting and unaware. Today she was a successful executive, a beloved wife, and a woman who knew exactly what she was worth. The journey from victim to victor had been long and difficult, but it had been worth every painful step. She had learned that strength wasn't about never falling down, it was about getting back up, fighting back, and building something better from the wreckage. Alexander and Rebecca had tried to destroy her, but they had only made her stronger. They had tried to steal her future, but they had only made her more determined to create the life she truly wanted. As Simone drove home to her husband, she thought about the letter from Rebecca that still sat in her desk drawer. Maybe someday she would respond to it. Maybe someday she would find it in her heart to forgive the people who had tried to destroy her. But forgiveness was a luxury she didn't need right now. Right now, she had everything she wanted. A career she loved, a husband who cherished her, friends who supported her, and a future full of possibilities. She had tested her husband by saying she got fired, and what she had overheard next had indeed changed everything. But not in the way Alexander and Rebecca had planned. They had planned to destroy her life. Instead, they had given her the chance to build a better one. And for that, someday she might even thank them. But not today. Today she was going home to the man who loved her for exactly who she was, to celebrate another victory in the life she had rebuilt from ashes. Today she was exactly where she belonged. 10 years after the divorce, Simone received a phone call from Patricia. You'll never guess who I just heard from, Patricia said. Who? Alexander. Simone felt a small flutter of something, not quite anxiety, not quite curiosity. What did he want? He wanted to know if I thought you'd be willing to see him. He says he has something important to tell you. After 10 years? What could he possibly have to say that would be important? I don't know. But he seemed different. Humbled. He's been working as a paralegal since he got out of prison. Never remarried. He says he spent the last decade thinking about what he did to you. Simone was quiet for a moment. She was 42 now, successful beyond her wildest dreams, happily married to a man who treated her as an equal partner. The woman who had been devastated by Alexander's betrayal felt like a different person entirely. What do you think I should do? I think you should do whatever feels right to you. You don't owe him anything. No, I don't. But if you're curious, if you think it might give you some kind of closure, then maybe it's worth considering. Maybe. That evening, Simone discussed it with Marcus. Are you interested in seeing him? Marcus asked. I'm not sure. Part of me is curious about what he wants to say. Part of me thinks it doesn't matter. It's your choice. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Would you be okay with it? If I decided to meet with him? Of course. You're not the same person you were 10 years ago, and neither am I. We're solid, Simone. A conversation with your ex-husband isn't going to threaten what we have. I love you. I love you too. So what are you going to do? I think I'm going to see him. Not because I owe him anything, but because I'm curious about who he's become. A week later, Simone met Alexander at a small cafe downtown. He looked older, grayer, and worn down by the years. But his eyes were clearer than she remembered, less calculating and more genuine. "Thank you for coming," he said when she sat down across from him. "What did you want to tell me?" "I wanted to apologize." "Really apologize, not just say the words because they're expected." "Okay. I've spent the last 10 years thinking about what I did to you, and I finally understand how wrong I was. Not just wrong in my actions, but wrong in how I saw you, how I saw our marriage, how I saw myself." Simone waited for him to continue. "I convinced myself that you were the problem, that you were too focused on your career, too independent, too strong. But the truth is, those were the things I loved about you when we first met. Somewhere along the way, I started to resent them instead of admiring them." "Why?" "Because I felt inadequate. You were so successful, so confident, so capable. I felt like I was living in your shadow. So you decided to destroy me rather than work on yourself." "Yes. And that was the worst mistake of my life." Alexander was quiet for a moment, staring down at his coffee cup. "I want you to know that I'm glad you fought back. I'm glad you exposed what Rebecca and I were doing. I'm glad you won." "Are you?" "Yes. Because you deserved to win. You were the victim and we were the criminals. Justice was served." "And Rebecca?" "She got out of prison 2 years ago. As far as I know, she's living in another state, working in a restaurant. I haven't spoken to her since the trial." "Do you regret losing her?" "I regret the person I became with her. I regret what we did together. But no, I don't miss her. What we had wasn't love. It was mutual destruction." Simone studied Alexander's face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. But he seemed genuinely different, humbled by his experiences and honest about his failures. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I'm in therapy and I'm working on making amends to the people I've hurt. I know I can never undo what I did to you, but I needed you to know that I understand the scope of my actions and that I'm sorry." "I see." "I also wanted you to know that I'm proud of what you've accomplished. I followed your career from a distance and you've built an incredible life." "Thank you." "Are you happy?" "Very happy." "Good. You deserve happiness." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Finally, Simone spoke. "I forgive you, Alexander." He looked up at her in surprise. "You do?" "Yes. Not because you deserve forgiveness, but because holding on to anger doesn't serve me anymore." "Thank you. But I want you to understand something. Forgiveness doesn't mean I trust you. It doesn't mean I want you in my life. It just means I'm letting go of the hurt you caused me." "I understand." "Good." As they prepared to leave, Alexander asked one more question. "Do you think you would have been happier if we had stayed married? If I had been a better husband?" Simone considered this. "No," she said finally. "I don't think I would have been happier. I think I would have been comfortable, but not truly happy." "Why?" "Because you never really saw me as an equal partner. You saw me as someone to be managed, controlled, shaped into what you wanted me to be. Even if you had been faithful, even if you had been honest, I don't think our marriage would have lasted." "And now?" "Now I'm married to someone who loves me for exactly who I am. Someone who sees my strength as an asset, not a threat. Someone who wants to build a life with me, not despite me." Alexander nodded sadly. "I'm glad you found that." "So am I." As Simone walked away from the cafe, she felt a sense of completion. The last chapter of her old life had finally closed. She had faced her past with courage and honesty, and she had emerged stronger than ever. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How did it go?" She typed back, "It went well. I'm ready to come home now. I'll be waiting." Simone smiled and headed home to her husband, to her life, to her future. She had tested her husband by saying she got fired, and what she had overheard next had changed everything. But in the end, the change had been for the better. She was exactly where she belonged.